The door opens, and a guy walks into the room with a girl in his arms. People began to say that it was the same bastard Joseph who was up to something again. Someone said that he was a fool because 5 years ago he had spent all his savings for a beautiful wife. People were talking about how his wife wasn't even allowed outside. Joseph is just obsessed with her. People talked about how she was really beautiful. Others heard about how Joseph liked another girl and was quickly bored with his wife. After getting drunk, he yelled that he wanted to get rid of his wife and that he wanted to sell her. Joseph's wife was just a thing to him. He paid with it like he paid property taxes. Divorce, it's too expensive, and unless you're rich, that's all you can think about. So the sale was the only way to get rid of the wife. Having made a contract and having received a certain amount of money, the wife becomes the property of the man who bought her. Joseph stood in the middle of the room, hugging the girl and smiling at people. Behind Joseph, on a chain, was his wife. The guy started shouting to the people that they were starting the bidding. Everyone was overjoyed at the news. The starting bid was 10 reens. After a while, it was 20 reens. After came 25, 50, 60, 100, 190, 200, 210, 220. Listening to all this, Joseph smiled and was glad of it. After a while, one man shouted out 300 reyen. When all the other men heard this, they stopped talking and gave way to him. Joseph began to congratulate the man and said that he guaranteed that the woman was obedient, even though Joseph did not know her well. The guy was telling the customer that if anything was wrong, he would know what to do. The man listened to Joseph and was telling him about how he knew everything. Joseph started talking about how his wife needed to be well explained, and that way she would be more obedient. Also, Joseph started talking about the buyer just not looking at the ugly girl if he didn't like her. The guy looked at the girl and talked about how he understood everything. After a while, the buyer started holding out money to Joseph, but suddenly someone in the crowd shouted that he would give 5,000 rein. People could not believe it. Someone asked him if he had not just heard it. The buyer began to tell the man that it was nonsense, because there can't be that many rich people here. Meanwhile, a guy came over and threw a bar of gold on Joseph's desk. He talked about how he would get a lot more if he sold it. Joseph began to tell the guy that he had scared everyone with his sudden appearance. The gentleman was telling Joseph that the deal was not finished and he needed to sign a paper. After a while, the guy had already signed the contract and told this gentleman that from now on, this woman was his. The guy smiled at the girl and told her to follow him. And afterward, the guy and the wife left the premises. The guy was walking through the woods, and afterward he came to a carriage and told the girl that they would ride the carriage next. But suddenly the guy stopped and told the girl that there was something he had to do first. The girl didn't know what the guy wanted to do and became frightened. The gentleman smiled and said that he would not hurt her and the girl should just stand still. After a while, the guy untied the rope around the girl's neck and threw her to the ground. And afterward, the guy started talking about how pleased he was to meet him. The gentleman's name was Ash Brinicle. The guy held out his hand to the girl and waited for her to give him hers. At first, the girl was a little distrustful of the guy, but afterwards, she slowly put her hand on his. After a while, the girl said her name was Chloe. The guy looked at the girl and smiled, and then asked her about whether they would go to the carriage to go to the Marquis of Brinicle's estate. After some time, Chloe was already sitting in the room. She looked around the room and talked about how this place was completely unfamiliar to her. Unfamiliar ceiling, and this whole room. Chloe remembered only the way here. The girl did not even remember whether she had fallen asleep or fainted. After a while, a maid came in to see the girl. She began to wish Chloe a good morning and said that her name was Betsy and she would help the girl to get ready. Betsy told Chloe that from now on, she was her maid, and the girl could address her by her name. The maid was telling the girl that she would always be there for her. Betsy said that Chloe could call another maid at any moment by pulling the bell if she was not there. Betsy talked about how Chloe hadn't cleaned herself up yesterday, because the girl came back late, so the maid offered to do it now. Chloe answered nothing, and just kept silent, and after a while she got up. Betsy told the girl that she would prepare her shoes. Chloe took off her clothes and stood under the shower. Betsy looked at the girl's body and was horrified by it. The maid talked about how there weren't many scars, which couldn't be said about the bruises. The girl talked about how in time the bruises would fade, but the scars would remain forever, reminding her of what had happened. It was done on purpose. The maid didn't understand how it was possible to calculate the force of a blow with such precision when beating a person. After a while, Betsy began to tell Chloe that she could take a bath for starters, and the girl's fatigue would pass quickly when the girl warmed up. Chloe remembered all the moments with Joseph. One time the girl had gone to her aunt's house to get thread as hers had broken. Joseph yelled at the girl and asked everyone who let her go to the neighbour's house. The guy yelled at Chloe and talked about her leaving the house to seduce the neighbour. The girl tried to explain to Joseph that this was not true, but the guy did not listen to her. Joseph talked about how he knew how the girl was being stared at by other men. The guy was telling Chloe to pray for mercy. There was no way the girl could forget those moments with the guy. Betsy pulled the girl out of her thoughts. She began to tell Chloe that the girl would freeze if she stood so long. After a while, the maid told Chloe to go to the bathroom. After that, the girl started to go into the bathtub. Suddenly, Betsy for some reason started screaming and calling for the girl. No one understood Chloe. No one believed in her. Even she could not believe herself. After a while, Betsy stood in the room with Ash. The maid was talking about how she had news for the boy. Ash talked about listening to the girl. Betsy was talking to the boy about how Mistress had slept well last night, but she had also been very frightened when the maid knocked on the door. Betsy was talking about how the girl was obviously worried about something. The maid continued talking. Betsy talked about how the Loai then went to the bathroom, and the girl saw that her whole body was bruised. Betsy talked about how, surprisingly, there were hardly any scars, and in the bathroom, Chloe passed out. Ash couldn't believe it. He was shocked. Betsy said that she had, and after the doctor's examination, the girl fell asleep again. The boy understood that such an abrupt environment was stressful for the girl, but perhaps there was another explanation. The boy knew that the bruises were the work of that man. Ash thought about how Chloe had probably been messed up so badly that she was now afraid of the bathroom. Joseph treated her disgustingly, only because he was intoxicated with undeserved wealth. Guy began to ask the maid if Chloe was still asleep. Betsy answered the guy yes. Ash got up from his chair and told the girl that he would check on her. The guy decided that now he would not contact that person, and Chloe should decide everything on her own. The girl lay in bed and slept. Ash looked at the girl. The guy saw how thin the girl was. Ash decided to start with the food first and make sure to think about the menu. After a while, the guy started calling the girl affectionately. After a while, the girl opened her eyes and looked at Ash. The guy was smiling and talking to the girl about how it was time for them to eat. Ash was talking about how even pretty girls like the girl shouldn't sleep that long. After a while, Ash was smiling and talking to the girl about her hair falling in her face. The guy started asking the girl if he could fix them. Chloe didn't say anything and didn't even look at the guy. Ash began to tell Chloe about saying okay or don't want to, because it's not that complicated. Ash talked to the girl about how it was her choice, thoughts, and will. The guy talked about that he would respect any decision of the girl, and after a while the guy once again asked if he could fix his hair. Chloe was shocked by such words. She thought about the permission, because it meant that she could have full control over her body. Chloe realised that she could really do it. After a while, Chloe was already sitting at the table, completely filled with food. Ash looked at the girl and told her that the girl's new hairstyle suited her. The guy suggested that the girl start since she needed to eat more. Chloe didn't understand the guy. She talked about how he was weird. By buying Chloe, the Marquis was able to get some benefit. Ash looked at the girl and suggested that she try cheating bread into soup, as it was really tasty. The girl was surprised at how relaxed she felt in this place. Chloe realised that the point was that Joseph would not come here, because it was the Marquis's estate, and Joseph would not allow his status. The girl understood that this is what aristocrats feel. A little thinking, Chloe dropped her fork. Chloe's gaze was filled with fear. The girl began to apologize, expecting to be scolded, but in response she heard only a laugh and Ash's cheerful voice, which told Chloe that the same thing had happened to him. After a while, the guy picked up the spoon and dropped it just like Chloe. The guy told the girl not to apologize for such a thing, because such a thing had happened to the guy himself. Ash began to ask the maid Alicia to bring clean utensils. Ash began to tell Chloe that Alicia was the head servant, and the girl could tell her if there were any problems with other servants, as Alicia would solve everything. After a while, the girl smiled and said that her name was Alicia, and she was glad to meet Chloe. At that, the girl called Chloe Madam. Chloe could not believe it. Ash began to tell the girl that she should eat first and then introduce herself. Ash told Chloe that if she did not want to eat, she should not force herself. Ash told the girl that she was free to choose for herself. Chloe felt free for the first time in a long time. The girl was eating, and Ash was looking at her. Some time passed, and the guy announced to everyone that he had something to say. Ash spoke in front of everyone about Chloe being his legal spouse from now on. Ash talked about the fact that he had made a legally enforceable contract. More specifically, Chloe was not engaged to her ex-husband and is legally an unmarried girl. However, the guy talked about how they had no idea what Joseph could do, so Ash suggested that they deal with it as soon as possible. The guy asked Chloe if she understood everything. The girl replied yes. The guy smiled and thanked the girl for her answer. Ash talked about how he understands the fact that maybe the girl doesn't want to be her wife, but right now, Ash is powerless to change anything. Ash said that Chloe was now the spouse of Marquis Brinicle. The guy started talking about what it looks like to marry him. Chloe became an aristocrat. Ash was sorry that, alas, becoming a wife is not Chloe's decision, so the guy gives the girl the right to choose for herself what the girl wants to do next. Ash said that the girl has two options. The first one is that if Chloe doesn't want anything, it will be so, because she doesn't have to go out into the society and fulfill the duties of a spouse. Ash told Chloe that a girl of persuasion has good clothes, surroundings, and servants. Chloe started to ask the guy about her second choice. The guy began to smile. He was glad that the girl was interested in the second option. Ash started to thank the girl for that. Chloe was looking at the guy the whole time and talking about how he was really weird. Ash began to tell Chloe that the second option is more difficult because they will have to learn everything that the wife of the Marquis needs to know. The girl will be provided with different teachers so that the girl does not overdo it. You will also need to attend social events, go to meet people, and you will no longer be able to sit at home. The guy talked about the fact that not everyone will be kind to Chloe. Perhaps someone will want to use the girl for their own purposes, to humiliate her for her origin. There will be hard studies, and there will be problems that Chloe will want to throw away, but they will also have to be solved. After a while, the guy began to ask the girl what she was choosing. Chloe began to think about these options. She didn't understand what Ash was thinking and why he was being so nice to the girl. The girl started to tell the guy that she married Ash, so Chloe wanted to take responsibility herself, but the girl didn't want to worry about something she wasn't interested in. The girl talked about how she wanted to choose something between those options. Ash said that it was clear to him, and in fact it turns out that her spouse is greedier than he thought, but the guy said that it is even good. Ash started to tell the girl that they should invite all the teachers to begin with. The guy told Chloe that if one day the girl caught herself thinking that it was difficult for her, or Chloe could not find a common language with a teacher, they would fix it all. Chloe began to tell the guy that she understood everything and she agreed with it. After a while, Ash smiled at the girl, and Chloe herself continued to eat, thinking about how delicious it was. For a few days, Chloe was groovy to the bed, since there was no strength after the cruelty she had endured, but after a while everything was back to normal. Back at the castle, the maid was screaming with pleasure as she looked at the gifts. The maid was telling Chloe to look at it. With a smile on her face, the maid said that today Marquis had to leave early, but at the same time the guy left gifts for the girl. The girl began to ask Chloe if they could open all these presents. Chloe told the maid yes. The maid noticed that the respectful tone in Chloe's voice disappeared. She realized that she was getting better. The maid was very frightened when Chloe started talking like that. The girl began to tell Chloe that she liked unwrapping presents more. After a while, a teddy bear came out of the box. He was very beautiful and soft. Chloe looked at him with great admiration, and after a while the girl hugged the bear. Chloe was very pleased. Chloe said that this bear could be pressed against you, and then it would feel like someone soft was hugging you. The bear had a cute face. The girl liked it a lot. This bear was like another bear that Chloe's parents had once given her. And even the ribbon was the same on the neck, and the left corner of the mouth was higher than the right one. In some min, Chloe thought that it could be a bear from her childhood. But touching the back ear, the girl was convinced that it was not that bear. With a bear behind her ear in secret from her parents, Chloe used it to exchange notes with a girl staying at their house. It was their secret. Their skirts fluttered from running. They looked for each other's ribbons. It was the happiest time when they played together. Back then, Chloe didn't know anything about anything yet. This bear was very similar to the one from her childhood. Thanks to this bear, Chloe was able to remember such pleasant days. That was enough for the girl. The maid sat there talking about what she had been told was a special order. The maid looked at it all and thought that a huge diamond would be attached to it. The maid was glad that fortunately, the gentleman was quite perceptive and Chloe liked the gift. The first thing to do was to start exploring the house. The maid began to ask Chloe if she was having a hard time. The girl nodded her head and said that everything was fine. Suddenly, the maid became wary and looked at one point. The maid began to ask Chloe if she could see that far door. The maid told her that she could go into any room except that one. The maid told Chloe that only the master could go in there. The maid told Chloe that this was a strict order. The maid understood that it was her responsibility to clean the apartments, but she realized that she didn't have to tell Chloe because she would start asking what was there. The girl who had recently become a madam could not enter the same room. Chloe noticed the fact that the maid is tense, which means that the Marquis really gave a strict order. It is a luxurious estate, with everything you need. However, there is a room that is forbidden. Chloe began to tell the maid that she had memorized everything. After a while, the maid pointed to another place and told Chloe to go the other way. It took all day to explore the estate. Chloe was told that there was a forest and a lake outside, but at the same time, the territory of this mansion is so large that even a carriage would take an hour to get there. After a while, Chloe stood in the room and thought about the fact that she had not walked so much for a long time. The girl is free, and now it all feels different. The girl was in a very good mood. Chloe stood, smiled, and hugged the teddy bear. Suddenly, a man's voice was heard, which began to tell the girl that it seems that Chloe liked the present. Ash appeared from around the corner and was very happy about it. Ash spoke to the girl about saying hello first. Chloe said hello a little with scraps of phrases. After a while, Chloe started thanking Ash for the gift. The guy smiled and told the girl that if she needed something, she could just ask for it. The girl was shy and told the guy that she had enough of that. Ash started telling the girl that there are those who didn't have a happy childhood and vice versa. The guy was telling the girl that it seems she used to be happier. Chloe said yes to Ash. The girl was really happy. Chloe talked about how if you think back to her childhood when Chloe had a similar teddy bear, she was the happiest kid. Chloe asked the guy about who gave it to her and if it was her parents who did it. Ash was telling the girl about how she wasn't given anything like that because he was a man and it was just a memory. After a while, the guy started asking the girl if she liked the estate. Chloe smiled and said that the manor was very beautiful and majestic. The guy thanked the girl for such words and said that it was nice before, but fashion changes, and after it, the interior of the house. And after Ash began to ask Chloe when she would be ready to accept teachers. The girl thought and said that she was ready to receive them tomorrow. The boy thought about it and said that in that case, he would send the invitations right away. Ash started to tell Chloe that he proposed to make a plan together so as not to overwork, and also Ash wanted the girl to say at once which teacher she didn't like. Ash started telling the girl that if she didn't like the teachers, they would find another one. The guy began to ask the girl if they could call only female teachers to begin with. Chloe immediately said that she was scared. Ash asked the girl what made her scared. Liao immediately began to remember Joseph's words. He was hitting the girl, insulting her for possibly stirring up trouble or accusing him of bad behavior. The guy thought about the girl's words for a bit, and after a while he added and said that they would be inviting female teachers first. Ash was telling the girl that she looked beautiful, even though she and the rest of the male servants lived here. The boy looked at the girl. He told her that everything was fine and Chloe could not explain anything, because the most important thing was that the girl felt fine, because everyone has different characters, both men and women. There are both bad and good among them. Ash told the girl to try to remember this. Chloe stood and thought about what the Marquis was really like and whether he could be trusted. The day after the teacher arrived, one of the teachers was in the castle and greeted the Marquis. The girl talked about her name was Eloine Haswid. Eloine said that etiquette was considered to be very important, so if Chloe had any questions while teaching, she could safely ask and not be shy. After a while, another teacher arrived. Her name was already Melissa Anton. The girl told Chloe that she would be glad to teach the girl. And also, Melissa added that with the help of books, it is possible to cause a storm of emotions, which she would like to share with Chloe. After a while, another teacher came in. The girl talked about how her name was Keeson Labaran. The teacher talked about how, although her father is only soon, she would like to be friends with Chloe. On the first day of school, they just introduced themselves and left. The maid looked away and talked about how the Marquis was very meticulous. Chloe began to ask the maid what she meant. The maid began to tell Chloe that Haswid was a very famous countess, and Anton and Liberian were only viscountesses, but they were very famous in narrow circles. The maid said that the Marquise Brinicle had nothing to regret, because the madam, after training, when she would find herself in the Soviet society, the teachers could be a support for Chloe in the future. Chloe realized what the matter was, because the last time she had communicated with people, it had been 3 years. Chloe's parents were middle class. They had their own business. They could not be called aristocrats, but they lived well. Chloe believed that she would be free forever until her parents were killed by bandits. After a while, a maid began to call the girl. The maid began to tell Chloe that the Marquis had sent the girl a lot of new things. Ash decided that the previously prepared was not enough. And after the maid showed the shoes that could fit Chloe, the girl began to ask Chloe if they were going to try it all on. Chloe stood for a while and then told the maid okay. The maid was very happy with this answer and began to tell the girl that she would help with the clothes. After a while, the maid started asking the girl where they would start. Chloe thought about what she wanted to try on first. Afterward, Chloe blurted out that she wanted that yellow dress. The maid smiled and said that everything suited Chloe because the girl's skin was very light. Chloe has very fair skin, so any colour would do. After a while, the girl put on the dress. The maid looked at Chloe and said that this dress really fits her very nicely. The Marquis has good taste. Chloe began to tell the maid that it seemed that the girl cared too much about her appearance, and then the girl decided to ask about who chose it and whether it was a Marquise. The maid smiled and said that the gentleman really had good taste. The maid told Chloe that she was even more lovely than she was. Chloe suddenly remembered one day with her parents. That day too, Chloe and her parents were all smiles. Before her mom died, Chloe had worn a yellow dress. Her mom had picked it out for the last time. And then, it all happened then. Ash was completely on business, so he came back in the morning. Chloe didn't know the details, but it seemed to her that he would always be in business. When Ash wasn't particularly busy, he had to be several times a day. But one day, Chloe got used to these visits. For Chloe, men had always been incomprehensible. Then Chloe did not even suspect that she was being used. Now that Chloe had found her freedom, she immediately realized how easily she could be manipulated. When her parents died, a neighboring couple who came to pay off their debts said that the parents' business had gone under. This meant that now Chloe would live in an orphanage, taking care of other children. While the girl was tormented at work, those spouses never once inquired about her life. One day Chloe saw them from afar. The girl noticed that they were richer than last time, and the director constantly told how men treated women outside the shelter. So Chloe, gripped by eternal fear, stopped going outside. Instead, the girl began to do more and more dirty work and was never thanked for her care. Every time Chloe asked about money, She was told that her stay at the shelter was expensive, so no one paid her for her work. And the signed contract forbade her to leave the territory near the orphanage. Moreover, they made a grey mouse out of Chloe, forbidding her to wear any jewellery. The director told Chloe that she was very worried because the girl was very beautiful. The headmistress told Chloe that it was dangerous to attract men, and each time the principal allowed herself to wear more extravagant clothes. When she chose the best clothes, she called Chloe, and afterwards she rejoiced like a child when she compared herself with her. The worst happened when a child in the girl's care fell ill. The orphanage turned around, and Chloe had to be given to a sponsor. She could only pray for the child's health. That's how she fell into the hands of Joseph, who was 15 years older. Remembering the past, Chloe clearly saw the reason for what had happened, an ill-mannered fool who made the wrong choice. Suddenly the girl began to call out. Ash stood in front of Chloe and looked at the girl, not hiding his smile. The guy started talking about how Chloe was so thoughtful that she hid her head. Ash asked Chloe what had happened. The girl started to tell the guy that she wasn't thinking about anything. Ash stood there for a while and talked about how since that was the case, that was great. Ash noticed Chloe in a new dress. This dress was purple in colour. Ash looked at the girl and talked about how it fit the girl's skin and eyes perfectly. Chloe smiled and told Ash thank you for saying that. The guy started telling the girl about how it wasn't worth the thanks. The guy started asking the girl if she liked the clothes he had chosen. Ash told the girl that he had been told that Chloe liked that yellow dress. Chloe was telling the guy that she did. The guy started telling the girl about how they could visit clothing stores together in the future. Ash was telling the girl that she didn't have to buy something and could just look at the clothes to get a sense of the girl's taste. Ash was telling Chloe that it would be great to take measurements and have a designer come in. The guy was telling the girl not to think it was necessary. Ash told the girl that they could do it if Chloe wanted to do it herself. The girl hesitated a little and was afraid to say, and afterwards Chloe asked the guy if she could do that. Ash smiled and said that of course it could be, because Ash's spouse was dear to him. Ash was telling the girl about how sometimes aristocrats could spend all the money they were given on dresses and accessories. The guy was telling Chloe about how, if anything, the girl could do the same. The girl was shocked by this. After a while, the guy started asking the girl if she had any more questions. Chloe lowered her head. There was one question in her thoughts, and this question constantly tormented the girl. Chloe kept thinking why the Marquis had bought her. Chloe constantly pondered over this question, however. In any case, the girl was afraid to find out the truth. Chloe could not understand the reason for the fear. After a while, etiquette lessons with Elaine Hazewade began. The teacher called out to Chloe. The girl stood next to her teacher and asked her what she wanted to know from her. Elaine told Chloe that keeping silent would not always be the right choice and to express her opinion when necessary, because sometimes Chloe's silence could lead to some misunderstandings. Chloe was telling the teacher that she would keep that in mind. Elaine began to ask the girl about the fact that this was not the first time she had attended such a class. Chloe replied yes. Elaine began to tell the girl that she understood, and then from the next class they would move on to a higher level. Elaine spoke to the girl about how she was sure the girl would do well. The study material Elaine had brought with her was not appropriate for the girl's level, so she would start the next class with a different curriculum. Chloe answered Elaine that she understood everything. The girl understood that she had been studying it since she was a child, but only now Chloe realized that she still had a lot to learn and understand. After a while, another teacher asked Chloe how her lessons had been. Chloe's history lesson began, taught by Melissa Anston. Chloe told Melissa that she liked everything. The teacher was very happy about it, and it was like a relief for her. Melissa asked the girl about who she learned to write like that from. The teacher was surprised by this, as she was sure that in their day, many young aristocrats did not know Heriosh, but the girl was proficient in it. The Empire uses only one language in spoken language, but there is one thing. They use Erin and the complex letters of Herio for writing, so they have to learn 2 languages at once. Melissa told Chloe that the girl's education was well taken care of by her parents. The teacher was telling the girl that they were very good. Melissa asked Chloe to let her know if the pace of the class was uncomfortable for her. The teacher told the girl that she wasn't smart enough to know what a person was thinking, just by looking at the expression on their face. Melissa began to ask the girl if she liked books. Chloe told the teacher that she had loved them since she was a child. Melissa was happy with that answer. She told the girl that since she liked reading when she was a child, it meant that Chloe would love it when she was older. Melissa talked to the girl about how all books always stay the same, especially the Marquis Vrinickel's library. Melissa talked about how it is truly marvellous. Marquis Vrinickel's library is known for having a huge amount of whole books. Melissa began to ask the girl about whether the girl had ever been there. Chloe answered the girl no. The teacher began to say that then, if there was a chance, they could visit it together in order for Chloe to find her favourite book. That said, it will have to be read first. Chloe replied to Melissa that it sounded wonderful, and it was true that books were wonderful. Chloe loved to look at her teacher when she genuinely liked something. Melissa began to ask the girl about whether it was really that noticeable. Chloe's world is limited to a tiny place, yet her world grows little by little as she meets new people. Melissa and the girl practiced, and afterward they called it a day. The teacher asked Chloe if Chloe liked it. The girl answered well. The teacher started talking about how wonderful it was, as they still had some time left. The teacher suggested Chloe to have a little chat. Suddenly, one of the teachers started asking Chloe how she seduced him. The teacher was talking about how the unapproachable Marquis was widely known among the girls of high society. The teacher told the girl that she was obliged to learn the secret way, so that if anything, the teacher could meet someone like him. Chloe didn't understand from the girl about what she meant by seduction. Chloe told the teacher that she didn't have any secret way. The teacher was telling the girl about how she looked modest. She also looked beautiful. The teacher told the girl that everything could be, because Chloe was beautiful and the Marquis could not resist. And after the teacher began to ask when they were getting married. Chloe could not believe her eyes. She was surprised by such a question. Chloe hadn't even considered something like that. The maid was telling the teacher that his lordship was gradually preparing for it. The maid was saying that the final date hadn't been set yet, so the Marquis couldn't give a definitive answer. The teacher said she understood, and afterwards added that the Marquis had a very calm character. The maid told the teacher that Madame always looked so serious. After a while, the teacher remembered something. She immediately started telling Chloe about the girl selling flowers on the street today. The teacher talked about the fact that she was wearing shabby clothes, so this girl was very sorry. So the teacher bought a bouquet from her, as she knew the Marquis might like it. The teacher told Chloe that she liked them herself, but she had a lot of them at home. After a while, the teacher asked the girl if she could give these flowers to Chloe. Looking at these flowers, Chloe remembered moments of the past. One day when Joseph got drunk and beat up a girl, he bought Chloe a small, crude bunch of flowers as an apology. He told Chloe about how he was having a very hard time living, and that was the reason for beating up the girl. It could have been a fatal mistake for Chloe, which is why he drank alcohol. But looking at this bouquet, it had nothing to do with that, so Chloe gladly accepted it. The teacher looked at the girl and did not understand what it was, and why Chloe had such a look during the class. The teacher talked about how the rumours weren't lying, and she really was incredibly beautiful, but she was just a blank slate. The girl purposely proved to her father to become the Marquis's teacher. In high society, when it comes to dancing and playing the piano, the girl has no equal, because for a girl, it's the easiest thing in the world. The girl talked about how she felt like she was doing it with an emotionless doll. The teacher talked about how she was just an insignificant girl and had looks that didn't match the Marquis. The teacher was talking about how she didn't even know how beautiful Esh Vrinickel was. In the 200 years of the Kazan Empire, there were only 5 noble families. Among them, Marquis Vrinickel was one of the founders and a blood relative of the emperor's family. His position and opportunities were off the charts. The Vrineckels didn't even show their children to the public until they were mature. Lee was the only one who could learn everything she needed to know. It was all necessary to inherit the title, and it was the first time she'd been able to enter high society at the planned age, after a pair of Marquis died in an epidemic 10 years ago. Ash Vrinickel, who was now an adult, said he would receive the necessary education until he was a perfectly worthy candidate to inherit the title of Marquis. Aristocrats with a daughter of marriageable age were the envy of most people. There were also those who were not yet of marriageable age, but they tried to marry him off anyway. It was normal for the heads of families to try to become close to him by any means possible. One of them had to take a high position. The teacher said that the girl was very good at dancing, although today was her first lesson. But it didn't matter, because Chloe even had an etiquette teacher, but the girl doubted that Chloe could write. The teacher talked about her being a noble lady. The teacher was talking about how anyone would be angry if they were ignored after being given a bouquet of flowers. In truth, that bouquet had been bought on purpose. Teacher had personally wrapped an armful of those flowers that she bought from that little girl today. It didn't matter how beautiful this marquise was. She was no different than that girl. Chloe was just a silly girl who doesn't realize how powerful she was lucky to be. Her teacher talked about her being pretty, but in everything else, she's a complete non-entity. The girls talked about how she was popular with men too, with such beauty, knowledge, and her family's past. The teacher talked about how she was so much better than this Chloe. Ash Rinnicle is not like the rest of them, the other men. The teacher talked about how he doesn't pretend to be smart, but the guy doesn't realize the burden of responsibility his position carries. It would be much better if this girl became the marquise instead of the current marquise. The teacher was angry and said that she should have been the marquise, and the girl decided to become one. Every day Chloe was busy with lessons, which later she repeated on her own in the evenings. The days passed very, very quickly. Chloe met many more people here than she had in the last 3 years. Chloe had a vague idea that this was the kind of life she had lived, in her past, not the truth. The girl kept looking at the flowers. She was thinking about whether she should put those flowers in a vase. Someone was telling the girl not to touch them and leave them there. Chloe said that it was strange, and she didn't understand why she felt uncomfortable when she saw them. After a while, Ash came to the girl. He began to ask Chloe about what she was thinking about, that she didn't even notice how someone came in. The guy was telling the girl about how she is an incredibly diligent student, and it's okay to take a sack every now and then. Chloe was telling the guy that she had said herself that she wanted to study, so she just couldn't do it any other way. The girl was no longer uncomfortable talking to this man. Ash is calm, even if Chloe is silent or stutters. Ash doesn't get mad at the girl, doesn't scold or question her. Chloe thought about what would happen if the guy stopped going to her. Chloe talked about how she now thought she would feel devastated if this man stopped coming to her. After a while, Ash decided to inquire about who the flowers were from. Chloe looked at the bouquet. After a while, the girl said that this bouquet was given to her by Catherine Laviren. Ash was wondering why she gave this bouquet to the girl. Chloe started talking about how the teacher said that when she saw the girl selling flowers, it reminded her of Chloe, so she decided to give those flowers to the girl. The guy thought about it, and after a while he asked the girl if she liked the bouquet. Ash told Chloe to answer without relying on the feelings or kindness of others, because the most important thing was what the girl liked. Chloe lowered her gaze to the floor and said that she didn't like them, as those flowers caused her bad memories. Ash began to ask the girl if it was possible that in the past, Chloe had sold flowers on the street herself. Chloe told the guy no, and something still wanted to say something. The guy reassured the girl and talked about how it's okay to only tell what you want to tell. Ash talked about how he wanted to hear everything that Chloe wanted to tell him. The girl started talking about how her past husband bought these flowers for the girl every time they beat her up. Ash walked up to the bouquets and with a smile on his face threw the flowers out the window and then yelled for people to clean up the trash. Ash began to tell the girl that it didn't matter how expensive or good a thing was, because if it caused unpleasant memories, it was very bad. The guy began to ask Chloe if Joseph had touched her. The girl said yes. Then Ash began to ask about how often he did it. The girl began to tell the guy about what she didn't know, because her memories were very vague. Chloe talked about Joseph beating the girl, falling asleep and then working, and so it was repeated from time to time. Ash told Chloe that she probably couldn't remember it all the way through because it had happened too many times. Ash started asking Chloe about how it started as soon as she started living in that man's house. Chloe told the guy that everything was right, and that was where it all started. Ash began to grit his teeth. The girl did not understand what was happening to him, and whether he was not disappointed, or maybe Marky despised the girl. Chloe did not know what to think. Chloe began to think that maybe she shouldn't have told about it. The girl told herself that if she had kept her mouth shut, then maybe the outcome would have been different. After a while, Ash began to apologize to the girl. Marquis apologized to the girl for questioning her about the painful memories. The guy started to approach the girl, and afterward Ash told Chloe that he knew very little about the girl, so he had to ask Chloe in person. The guy started telling the girl about how if there was anything else the girl wanted to talk about, she shouldn't be shy. Ash talked about how it was okay if the words were a mess, or Chloe couldn't pick them up at all. Ash talked to the girl about how if she wanted to yell or get angry for no reason, that would be okay too. The guy was sure that the girl was upset and discouraged by her painful memories, but Ash still thanked the girl for confiding in him. Chloe looked at the guy and saw that his look was sincere. Chloe started to tell Ash that she wasn't upset. The girl said that she was being beaten up because she deserved it. Ash couldn't believe what the girl said. The guy once again questioned Chloe about what she had said. The girl started telling the guy about beating her because Chloe couldn't die with her appetite. Chloe talked about how if she could hold back, Joseph would not have beaten the girl. Ash listened to all this and didn't realize how much the girl was suffering. The guy started asking the girl about what he used to hit her about. Chloe told the guy about the fact that he had many reasons. The girl talked about being slow. Also, the girl was indifferent when she asked Joseph for money to buy bread. And also because she suddenly fell asleep, even though Chloe had a lot of things to do. The girl talked about how she was the cause of all her troubles. If the girl didn't think about it in that way, Chloe couldn't bear it. The girl talked about how it was all her fault, and Chloe was too stupid. Chloe talked about how it was all her fault. The girl felt that way because she thought she could take it all. Ash started telling the girl that if he were a normal person, he wouldn't have hit Chloe for something like this. The guy decided to ask the girl a question. Ash asked Chloe about whether she would hit a child younger than herself for far-fetched reasons. Chloe said no and said that she had made a mistake. The guy told the girl that what she did was not a mistake. The guy talked about how people always make little missteps in everyday life, but they usually don't call those missteps mistakes. Ash talked about how this man named Joseph, who beat up the girl, was trying to satisfy himself at Chloe's expense. The girl asked Ash about how she hadn't done anything wrong. The guy started talking about how what she was doing wasn't wrong. Honestly, it wasn't that Chloe wasn't in pain. The girl was in so much pain that she wished she never had that feeling again. The girl wanted to live happily. Chloe wanted to love and be loved, like in the old days when she lived happily and carefree. She wanted to go back to that time. The girl wanted to cry for so long. Chloe wanted to escape from the man who was tormenting her. Watching all of this, tears came to Ash's eyes. The girl looked at the guy and told him about crying for her. The guy started telling the girl that she could cry as much as she wanted. After a while, Chloe was sitting in class. The teacher was telling the girl that it was because of him that Chloe was able to advance. The teacher said that many who study here do not do it wholeheartedly, justifying it by the fact that it is boring or that they know absolutely everything in the world. But Chloe is indeed a diligent student. Given the current trends of etiquette lessons, there are many details that are usually overlooked. The teacher was telling Chloe about how she was extremely happy to even have the girl ask questions. Chloe was telling the woman about how it's not like that, and she's just a good teacher. Chloe no longer studies or mumbles when she speaks, so is able to answer questions normally. During the third session, Elaine suggested that Chloe's inability to communicate was not due to physical limitations. It was a phenomenon caused by prolonged psychological abuse. Elaine was telling Chloe about how she looked so much prettier when she smiled. Chloe asked her teacher about what it meant that a girl would have to smile when she first went out in public. The teacher smiled and talked about how there were people who showed their charisma when they smiled. However, Chloe thought that it would be fine if Chloe wished to do otherwise. That said, an indifferent facial expression might make people wary, or they wouldn't be able to understand what Chloe was thinking, so the teacher said the girl had to be careful. Chloe told Elaine that she understood everything. After a while, Elaine decided to ask the girl how old she was. Chloe said that she was 25. What the teacher has noticed is that the girl isn't very outgoing, but it's not because she's lazy or arrogant, and Chloe doesn't try to hide her personality behind a mask. She even hides a compassionate heart. The teacher talked about how if this girl is as good a person as she thinks she is, then when Chloe goes out into the world, Elaine thinks it wouldn't be unreasonable to help her if necessary, especially since Chloe is now her student. After a while, a maid came into Chloe's room. The girl told Chloe that she was still asleep, but immediately stopped talking and looked at the girl's face. The maid spoke about beautiful people staying beautiful in their sleep. The maid was glad that she had prepared a big pillow. The maid was amazed that even though Chloe had faced such difficulties, she had not become mean to others. The girl is still uncomfortable around the maid, and Chloe tries to treat her well. The maid called the girl a nice madam. After a little thinking, the maid decided to move the girl to another place, but at the same time, the maid realized that she could not do it herself. The maid realized that there was nothing she could do about it, so she had to wake Chloe up quickly. But before he could do anything, Ash called out to the maid and said that he would do it himself. The guy showed his finger to the girl to keep her voice down. After a while, Ash picked up Chloe and looked at her. The girl felt it and decided to open her eyes. Ash began to tell the girl to sleep a little longer. After a while, Chloe closed her eyes and fell asleep once more. The guy was looking at the girl and thinking that at first, he was happy just from the thought of bringing Chloe to this place. It's not easy to find someone who can track down a deliberately hidden person, especially since Ash has a lot on his plate. Thanks to a hitch they'd barely found, Ash was waiting for a girl at that bar. Claude's old bar door swung open, and the guy saw Chloe going inside. Ash froze then, and just couldn't even take a breath. The mistreatment had made her pale skin look terrible, and a certain brat, in the form of her husband, had immediately raised a fuss and put her up for auction. All the guy wanted was to make up that lowlife and take Chloe back to his place. Ash wished he could have found the girl sooner. If only he had become a marquis a little earlier, the guy wouldn't have had to see Chloe like this. Now Ash could see that smile again. The guy talked about how now the girl could smile just like that time, and Ash would definitely help the girl. After a while, the girl started having a lesson with the teacher. She was telling Chloe to imagine as if the girl had demolished the village where the commoners lived. The teacher was telling the girl that she herself had lived in a similar village. Chloe stood and thought it all over. The funny thing was that the teacher would never have talked about it if it had been Betsy or the other maids. But at the same time, she always tries to refer to things she is strong in, pretending to be the elegant lady in the world. Chloe couldn't understand whether she came here to be a teacher or to watch Chloe's engagement from the outside. The girl decided that she would never know. Teacher Hedino smiled and looked at Chloe. She talked about when his lordship was going for a walk. Could Chloe please let her know about it, as there was a lot that she, as a teacher, should teach Chloe. And the teacher also added about how, if things were that dangerous, they could just sit in a restaurant. Chloe was unsure if the piano and dance lessons were of good quality. The girls' piano lessons ended at the beginning level. It was as if the teacher's knowledge was limited to that level. The teacher looked at the girl and talked about how she looked very tired. The teacher decided to ask Chloe about whether the girl had slept badly. Chloe answered the teacher that she fell asleep last night while she was reading a book. The teacher laughed a little and talked about how those who have seen books before read them with no problem, even if Chloe is not used to it. The teacher was telling the girl that she should take care of her pretty face, which captivated his lordship. After a while, the teacher asked Chloe what she was reading. The girl replied that she was interested in reading the Girl with the Yellow Ribbon series of books. The teacher decided to laugh about it, and afterward told the girl about the fact that this book was meant for children. The teacher said that of course it was interesting to read, but as a marquise, the girl should strive for a higher level. Commoners and nobles, two different worlds. The teacher talked about how in their lives they must give themselves to others according to our authority and capabilities, and in order to do this, Chloe must be as strict as possible with herself. The teacher talked about how Chloe must learn to do this. Chloe could no longer think the way she used to. The girl understood the fact that the teacher continued to cross the line more and more, but at the same time, Chloe did not want to say anything in answer. Especially, it was Ash who had chosen her. the teacher began to slowly approach the girl. She talked to Chloe about how she might be here to teach her piano and dance, but the girl decided that she didn't think it was right not to tell Chloe about it for her own well-being. The teacher was thinking about how this was much more important than today's class. The teacher took Chloe's hands and asked the girl to listen to her carefully. The teacher talked about how if Chloe doesn't know anything because of her humble background, it is better for a girl to follow someone you know well. The teacher said that the girl knew more and was more prepared for society than Chloe, and it would be good if Chloe followed the teacher's advice. The teacher had many thoughts in her head. She talked about how, of course, it didn't matter who Chloe was before, but now she was a marquess. Other nobles would have chickened out, but during this time, Chloe didn't react in any way. She is exactly the kind of woman she is. After a while, the teacher asked Chloe if she could read letters. Chloe didn't want to answer anything to the teacher. Then the girl made a surprised look on her face and asked Chloe about maybe she should help with that, because Chloe can't tell Lady Matilda that her classes are too difficult for Chloe. The teacher told Chloe that she recognized that the language of the empire was difficult, and since Chloe was failing, no matter how much effort she put in, the teacher would be happy to help. The girl started telling Chloe that it would be a good idea to start with story and picture books. The teacher asked Chloe if he could recommend her a couple of good books. Chloe looked at the teacher and answered nothing. The girl didn't understand what was going on with the Marquise, her facial expression that said that she didn't even realize how she was insulted. The teacher looked at it all and grinned. He was laughing with Chloe. Ash had once told Chloe about Count Laviren saying that his daughter was a skillful teacher, so he listened to his recommendations. After a while, Ash walked into the girls' room. He watched the lesson that was going on with Chloe and afterwards told the girl that, as expected, the teacher's talent was incredible. The teacher was shocked to see Ash standing behind her. She wondered how long he had been in their room and what he had heard. The teacher smiled and told Ash that he was flattering her. The girl started talking about how she couldn't believe that the guy had personally come to watch the teacher teach his classes. The teacher talked about how if she had known, she would have prepared better. There was a strange feeling going on inside the teacher. She didn't understand what was going on. Because as far as the girl knew, the Marquis never attended or showed any interest in other classes, but nevertheless, he came to the teacher and even complimented her. The teacher decided that this was at least a great chance to leave a good impression of herself. After a while, the girl thought that perhaps he had come here on purpose to see her. Catherine said that Marquise could not even express her own opinion and only shone her pretty face. The girl said she was Catherine Laveran, a lady who was much smarter and knew how to behave in society. The teacher decided that Ash liked her. The girl didn't know what to do, since Katerina also liked the Marquis. The teacher didn't know how to tell the guy that their feelings were mutual. The guy started to tell Catherine that she was honoured to teach his wife. Gosh, judging from the fact that your way of teaching that you chose is coercion, it seems the girl thought that Catherine was above the Marquis. Catherine couldn't believe that the boy had heard everything, heard absolutely everything. The girl immediately began to apologise. Catherine said that she was too eccentric, so she made a mistake. The girl said that she didn't mean to offend Chloe. Catherine asked the guy for mercy and understanding. Ash kept listening to this and talking about how it was so strange because he wasn't the one Catherine should apologise to, and the girl should apologise to his dear wife. Catherine couldn't believe it. She refused. The teacher did not know what kind of insensitive person was in front of her. The Marquis Vrinikel that Katerina had always known was kind, and he was always as warm as sunlight. The girl did not know that there was a side to him as well. Catherine told herself that she had done nothing wrong. She couldn't understand why she had to bow down to this woman. Catherine gathered herself, approached Chloe, and began to apologise for her carelessness. The girl talked about how she had overstepped her bounds and lost her temper. Ash began to ask Chloe how they would proceed. The boy asked the girl if they should forgive her. Catherine listened to all this and did not understand why he was talking to the teacher in a different tone. With Chloe, he behaves differently. Catherine talked about how if the guy realises something, namely, that the girl's head and heart are empty, soon Ash will get tired of her heartlessness and will regret his decision. Catherine said that Chloe was no smarter than a dog, and most likely she would believe in the sincerity of my intentions and forgive Catherine. Catherine said that they should just wait, and everything would be back to normal. Suddenly, Chloe asked the girl why she should forgive her. Catherine could not believe what the girl said. She didn't understand who Chloe thought she was to ask such a thing. When Catherine bowed her head and begged the girl to forgive her, kneeling down, the teacher started yelling at Chloe and talking about how she was asking the girl to forgive her. Catherine said that under other circumstances, she would have kicked the girl, and Chloe would have begged for forgiveness. Chloe began to ask Catherine what she had done wrong. The girl didn't know what she could have done wrong. Catherine decided that Chloe still hadn't realized that she had been insulted, which meant that nothing had gotten through to her yet. Catherine had a plan. The girl talked about how she could play on the Marquis's feelings, and then Catherine might be able to get away with it. The girl decided that she should act like an idiot with the Marquis. Catherine realized that this was brilliant and decided to act. She talked about how if she suddenly did something wrong, it was because she was just worried about the Marquis, so she decided to explain everything to Chloe gradually. Suddenly, listening to all this, Chloe started talking about how the girl was mocking her and ignoring her. Catherine couldn't believe that it was a girl saying that. Chloe began to explain that it was not the first time it happened, and in all their previous classes, the girl spoke to Chloe in a similar tone. The teacher couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that Marquise was saying such a thing. Meanwhile, Chloe started talking about how, as soon as there was someone with more influence than Catherine, everything changed immediately. Chloe said that she could say for sure that Catherine did not sincerely ask for forgiveness. The teacher listened to all this and couldn't believe his eyes. Catherine was sure that Chloe didn't understand anything and wasn't paying attention to what she might think. The teacher started yelling about how it wasn't like that at all, and she was really worried about Chloe. Once in class, the girl told Chloe about how this happens all the time in society. So Catherine did it to help the girl gain experience. Chloe began to ask Catherine why she did it, to show what society can do, or Catherine wanted to show her bad side. The teacher said that she did, and it was all just for Chloe. Catherine was telling the girl that she understood what she meant, and it was all true. Chloe began to tell the girl that it was her fault, because Catherine herself looked down on Chloe and felt her superiority. Chloe was telling Catherine that the most important thing was that the girl was still not sorry for her behaviour. Catherine yelled and talked about how it wasn't true, and it wasn't true. Chloe started talking about how she never saw it that way. After a while, the girl called out to Ash. Katerina prayed that Chloe would say she forgave her. But something didn't go according to plan, and Chloe told Ash that she didn't want to forgive the man. The girl talked about how if she forgave her so easily, Katerina thought that she could act however she wanted again. Catherine realized the fact that the girl was looking for an opportunity. The teacher began to tell Chloe that she could not treat a person like that because of one mistake. But Chloe answered the girl that it was not the first time, and Catherine just ignored the girl. The teacher yelled and talked about how she regretted it, and she was really doing it for Chloe. Chloe then decided to prove everything to Catherine. Marquise started telling the teacher about Chloratia Volume 1. It's a book about music for kids that Chloe read when she was 8 years old. But at the same time, Catherine still wanted Chloe to play the piano, just as it was written in this book. The girl asked Catherine about the fact that there were no other books besides this one. The teacher thought for a while and said that she wanted Chloe to learn to play just perfectly, so then Chloe would move on. But the Marquis decided to talk, and said about how as far as she knew, 5 more books of Chloratia followed after that. The teacher began to tell the girl that they would then proceed to Namun after that, to increase the strength of the fingers, practicing sonatina for technique. Chloe began to tell the girl that by now, most were done with the first book of Chloratia, and they hadn't even gotten past 10 chapters yet. Chloe talked about how Katerina didn't feel like finishing the first half of the score of the first part of Chloratia, and afterwards, Katerina told Chloe to practice 100 times at home. The Marquise began to ask the teacher that maybe the girl herself did not know how to play beyond the first volume. The girl began to ask Catherine about her doing that the girl didn't have the confidence to train Chloe further. Chloe talked about how that was exactly how the lady had spoken to her. The Marquise had also done that for Catherine's well-being. Chloe asked the lady if she would forgive her. Catherine couldn't say anything and just chuckled. Ash heard all this and told the girl that it was the laugh of a yard dog. Afterward, Marquis talked about how even a dog's laugh is a luxury for a teacher. Chloe asked the guy about how wasn't he just being rude to this lady. The guy replied that he would like to hear more about everything, but right now he was just thinking about one thing. Ash talked about how obviously, right now, Catherine was being very rude. Catherine was still yelling and talking about how it was all a misunderstanding. Ash was saying that whether it was a misunderstanding or not was up to him. The guy was saying that if he didn't think it was a misunderstanding, then it wasn't a misunderstanding. The boy asked the girl to tell her father that he would have to discuss the TYRANT deal with another family. Ash told Catherine to let him know about it. The teacher couldn't understand what was going on. The Ash talked about how if her father asked for a reason, then Catherine should say that she was disrespectful to the Marquise. Ash said that her father would understand immediately if Catherine said that today she had been fired from her position as Chloe's private tutor. Catherine began to cry and talk about how they had no right to insult her. The boy looked at the girl and talked about how she had insulted the Marquess Chloe Vrinicle. Ash talked about how everyone values the honour of the Marquess, and by her behaviour, she had insulted that honour. Catherine started telling Ash about how she just decided to put the simpleton in her place. The teacher was talking about how he was too cruel. The boy started to tell Catherine that he was still in control, but it would be better to leave the room. Ash began to say that if Chloe did something like that again in the future, it would not end with one warning. Catherine fell to the floor and began to apologise once again. The girl said that she was too young, so she was naive and could not hold back. Security approached the girl, and Ash told them to kick her out of here. It had been 10 years since Chloe had expressed herself so clearly and firmly. Chloe thanked Ash for helping her. The guy talked about how it wasn't worth it, and Chloe couldn't even imagine how happy the guy was when Chloe answered Katerina so bravely. Ash talked to Chloe about how she can keep saying what she wants to say. Chloe started talking about how compared to how Ash treats other people, he becomes a completely different person with Chloe. Ash was telling the girl that Chloe would meet similar people in the future. The guy talked about how he was sure there would be a lot of them. The guy talked about the fact that there are those who don't know what they are talking about, those who mock others excessively, those who make things that don't belong to them their own. There are even people who just like to spend everything on others for no known reason. To those people, good Chloe would look like easy prey. It's a shame, but that's the reality. The guy was afraid that as long as Chloe was in this world, the girl would have to face such people. Chloe talked about what she had been through. After her parents died, their friends came and said that Chloe could take care of herself. Without any connections with the outside world, the manager of the orphanage gave Chloe a room, dumping all the work on the girl and paying nothing. Chloe was stupidly naive and was forced to marry Joseph, feeling that the freedom given to you is getting smaller and smaller. Isn't that the real fear of any human being? Of course, everything was different, but practically nothing had changed. But it had been much worse before. Chloe couldn't even say anything. They didn't listen to a single word she said. Chloe likes the current situation much better. Lady Katerina wouldn't admit her guilt, and Chloe didn't think she would regret it in the future. But at first, Chloe even wanted to accept her apology. Chloe asked the guy if he had often experienced something like this. The guy smiled and told the girl that it was so. Chloe started to slowly walk up to the guy. Ash started to ask if the girl was okay, and if she was in pain. The girl didn't say anything and just looked at the guy. Ash smiled and told the girl that she looked really nice. Ash was telling the girl about how, after everything Chloe has been through, the girl still cares about others. The girl was telling Ash that it was all because the guy saved her. Despite his condition, the guy came up to Chloe and saved her. The girl talked about how the guy has always been kind to her, so she doesn't want Ash to get hurt. The guy smiled and laughed and told the girl about how she was really very kind. Ash was talking about how it seems like he underestimated all the amount of kindness the girl has. After a while, the guy took the girl's hand and asked her about the fact that if Ash was hurt, Would Chloe hug him? The girl looked at the guy with surprised eyes. Noticing this, Ash told Chloe about the fact that if she didn't want to, she didn't have to do it. Chloe noted that no one had ever hugged her except Joseph. His hands were very rough, like a forcefully pressing wall. Sometimes the thought of those times made Chloe feel sick. However, there was no such thing from Ash. The girl talked about how she didn't like it, but Chloe didn't hate it either. Ash was always thinking about the girl, asking if she was okay. This man was different. After a while, Chloe hugged Ash and snuggled her face into his chest. The girl was not afraid of him. Ash hugged the girl to calm down, but it seems that it was Chloe who was being soothed here. The guy was telling the girl that the warmth of a human body is very soothing. The girl couldn't understand what that feeling was. It's not a feeling of tension, but something more exciting. It's something warm, something indescribable. The girl liked the feeling a lot. Meanwhile, Ash liked it too. He drew his hand to the top of Chloe's head and then put it down. Cruel conditions can easily change people. There were many cases when Dobrynya and friendly people, having experienced adversity, drastically changed for the worse, but it does not seem that Chloe has changed much. The girl asked Ash if his heart hurt. The girl who said those words doesn't know what she was trying to express. Her emotionless face seemed to glow a little, and her barely noticeable smile has the power to change people. It's just like sleeping and fading away before, even though those feelings seem to be forgotten. The Chloe that Ash had known a long time ago was still hidden inside. Being neglected and constantly tortured, both physically and psychologically, must have taken a very heavy toll on the girl. But even so, Ash, a man who was already used to pain more than others, would suffer even worse than loneliness. The boy did not understand how a girl with such a kind heart could tolerate all this cruelty. In this world, people would not leave the goddess alone. When Ash found out she was married, Guy decided that if she was happy, Ash wouldn't even try to win her heart. Guy had been able to help her from the shadows, but that decision was for naught. Her marriage wasn't even about happiness. Joseph didn't even consider Chloe a person. Ash wanted to get rid of all the people who were responsible for her unhappiness, but first, the guy had to give Chloe a choice. The people who had done that to her could sincerely ask her for forgiveness. And in general, having forgiven them, Chloe would find peace of mind. Ash, of course, didn't think it could happen, so this is a coincidence the guy put aside for later. Nevertheless, this is an isolated case when a guy turns a blind eye to something like this. If Chloe comes to see Ash again and asks to get rid of someone, the guy will no doubt do it with all his cruelty. No matter how long it takes, Ash will do it no matter what, and will love Chloe for the rest of his life. Bar. Joseph sat at the table, holding a bottle. He saw that the liquid in the bottle had run out. Joseph began to wonder if he had finished it. The guy was talking about how a couple days ago he had been glad he had sold his stupid, emotionless wife and gotten a lot of money for it. And now there are only a couple of coins left. Joseph talked about how money comes and goes easily. As soon as Joseph got the money, he bought a big house and started to gamble big. At first he won a lot of money, but that was the end of it. From then on, money began to kill at a furious rate. Joseph thought he had grabbed luck by the tail when he got a whole mountain out of a couple of coins, but ended up blowing them all. The guy was on the verge of bailing out his new house. After a while, Joseph was approached by a girl. She talked to the guy about how she couldn't live like that, and afterward asked Joseph if he could give her more. The girl talked about how she knew her baby was the best. The guy noticed the fact that all this woman does is nag at him. Joseph wished that Chloe was standing in front of him. Although the house was old, but it was always clean, Chloe was always a cleaner. The boy began to tell the girl what he should do to make money appear, and maybe he should conjure it up. The girl started asking Joseph what he was talking about, because she didn't understand at all what the guy meant. The girl asked the guy to say that he loves his girlfriend, his Camille. After a while, Joseph kissed the girl. The guy started asking her if Camille was happy now. Joseph told the girl about him giving her something better than words, so she should tell him. Camille smiled and decided to tell about the man who bought his ex. The girl talked about how he wasn't just someone with a tight purse. He seemed to be a nobleman. Camille talked about a rumour that had recently been circulating in high society. Joseph asked the girl what the rumour was about and what people were talking about. Camilla began to talk about a rumour about a famous noble family. The rumour was that the wife was a commoner of indescribable beauty, and even the emperor himself approved the marriage. Camilla says that maybe the rumour is going on because the exact date of the wedding has not been set yet. The girl said that there are rumours about this one too, and it's not clear what to believe, but all that is known is that she is a brown girl with curly hair and mysterious violet eyes. Camille asks Joseph about the fact that doesn't the girl in the rumours resemble an ex-girlfriend? Joseph could not believe that this emotionless woman now belonged to a famous noble family. The guy wanted Chloe to suffer. Joseph sold her to amuse himself. He wanted her to be finally finished. That way she would miss and suffer for Joseph even more. Camille talked about how this girl was Joseph's ex after all. The girl began to tell the guy that Joseph was not thinking about making a big score with them, since neither the man who bought her nor she wanted her past to be known. Chloe was the one who, sobbing at Joseph's feet, asked for forgiveness for her actions. When the guy was amused with her, he felt a kind of superiority that filled him. Joseph was older than Chloe, uneducated and tired of life. Therefore, the guy despised the girl even more. But at the same time, Chloe was luckier than Joseph. Besides, it became a good reason for her suffering. Because of that case, Joseph's inferiority complex only got stronger. The worst thing is to think you're disappointed in yourself. Joseph could not believe that the girl was in a noble family. After all, he had sold her to make Chloe feel guilty. He could not believe that this girl became better than him, although she should be lower than Joseph. The guy figured he'd pull in a fortune. Joseph talked about how if he was pleasing a scandal among the common lud and this arrogant nobility, they would have no choice but to kick Chloe out. Such pure-blooded aristocrats don't like their pure blood being mixed with niggers. The guy thought about it and decided that it was Camille who had fallen in love with him on the idea of selling Chloe, because that way he'd have tons of money. Joseph talked about how it would work out the right way this time too. After a while, the guy told Camille okay. Joseph tells the girl to find out who Chloe is, now sitting on Chloe's neck. The guy humiliated Chloe in front of everyone. He couldn't think that the girl had climbed so high. The guy realized that if Chloe fell to the bottom after that, she would finally break down. The castle. A maid was sitting in the room and was fixing Chloe's hair. The maid was telling Chloe that it would not be long before you could go to the tea party. The maid was talking about the fact that Chloe was planned to be presented, as a marquess, at a larger ball. The maid spoke about the fact that the host had decided to have a small tea party to begin with, so that Madame could familiarise herself with such events. Chloe spoke to the maid about what she had heard. The girl talked about how much she appreciated Ash taking care of her. Chloe thought about the fact that it was too early for her to appear before the general public. Most people she would meet would probably despise her because she was a commoner who had become a marquess. Chloe talked about how she had just finally accepted that she was a marquess. It's all thanks to Ash. Chloe called them newlyweds. Hearing this, the maid asked the girl what she said. The girl remained silent and said she didn't say anything. Katerina's castle. The father asked the girl if she realized what Katerina had done. The girl stood and told her father that she had done nothing wrong, and she just wanted to teach the arrogant girl a lesson. Katerina didn't understand how she dared to do that to her. Katerina talked about how it wasn't fair. The father told the girl that although she was a commoner, and now she had become a marquess, the father said that this marriage had been arranged and approved by the emperor, and Chloe's position was above Catherine's. The father said to teach her as befits a teacher. Catherine still screamed and talked about how she had done nothing wrong. The father was telling the girl that if she was saying that it was the Marquis who was wrong, then it was definitely Catherine's fault. The father was saying that the Marquis had memorized every word Catherine said. Father talked about how after he talked to the lawyer, he asked father what he wanted to be punished for, humiliation or breaking the trade deal. The father asked Catherine if she knew how important the deal was to them. Father thought that Catherine would get close to the Marquise. and it would be of great benefit to his business. But in return, Catherine came in and set it all up. Father talked about how it was all over now. Catherine asked her father why she had to be friendly with Chloe, since she was just a dumbass commoner. Her father told the girl that it was all because she was a marquise, and everything Catherine said was seen as a humiliation of the marquise's face. Moreover, Catherine, she failed in her role as a teacher and did not teach Chloe how to behave in society. Her father told the girl to admit her guilt. Catherine started yelling at her father and telling him how he could defend her, especially saying that the daughter is wrong. The father started telling his daughter that he was not defending anyone, and he just wanted to point out his mistakes to the girl. The father was telling the girl to wake up. Katerina had no idea how difficult it was for a simple viscount to move to the capital. Her father worked day and night to keep the family on its feet. In addition, Catherine asked the marquise for meetings with the marquis. The father asked the girl if it was true. Catherine began to tell her father that she just wanted to have a one-time chat with him. The girl began to ask her father about the fact that she was the one who told him about it, and that was all she could do. Her father has realized that his young and naive child is not yet allowed to be in secular society. Instead, Catherine will stay at home and relearn how to behave properly. The father told the girl that the marquis had said that if it happened again, then he'll cancel all his contracts in the capital. His father said he would do anything to hold on to his position. Otherwise, in order not to go completely bankrupt, he would have to sell all of Catherine's dresses and valuable jewelry. After a while, the girl left and closed the door behind her. Her father thought about everything that had happened and could not understand what was wrong with her. The Vicomte La Vilaine was a man who lived in a small provincial town, and by his talent, he made his way to the capital with great success. Father understood that getting Katerina close to the marquis so that they could bond and become good friends was still a possible plan, but the documents that the marquis sent have a detailed account of what Katerina did and said to the marquis. Sometimes the girl even tried to find out the marquis's whereabouts. Even worse, she asked the marquise for meetings with the marquis. Her father talked about how he couldn't read it anymore. Even though she knew what the marquis was capable of, she had behaved so low. It's probably because while she was with the marquise, she didn't realize what she was doing. Because the viscount had made a decent fortune, he spoiled his girl too much. It's because of her father's excessive carelessness that Catherine became so arrogant. Meanwhile, Catherine was running around the castle. She did not understand how Chloe could tell all this to her father. The girl talked about the fact that if she could not bitch about such a small thing, then the distance between Chloe and the marquis would soon begin to increase. Catherine talked about how if the girl had done things the right way, she wouldn't have said anything to Chloe. Catherine screamed and talked about how it was all the fault of this marquise. The girl realized the fact that she had to get back at her at any cost. Meanwhile, in the castle of the marquis, Chloe sat and thought about the fact that when they get married, whether they will love each other. In a noble family, there are serious requirements for the future heir. Chloe didn't know if it was normal that she would be an aristocrat of low origin, and whether her child will be treated like a bastard. But the most important thing is whether Chloe can even decide to do this. For a girl, a relationship is a thing in which there can only be pain and fear. Chloe had a lot of unpleasant memories. Nevertheless, then, with Ash, the girl felt calm. Chloe thought that maybe they could live with the guy happily ever after. Because of this, during the lessons on the history of the empire, the girl learned a little about the Vrinicles. Not much, of course, but it was still information. After a while, the maid began to tell Chloe that she was finished. Betsy looked at Chloe and told her that she looked great. Chloe smiled and told the maid that it was all thanks to her efforts. Betsy asked Chloe where she was going. The girl answered that she was going to the library. Betsy told the girl that among the nobles, one could hardly find such a diligent student as Chloe. The girl smiled and thanked the maid for such a compliment. After a while, the girl was in the library. Chloe took some books and started reading. The history of the Vrinicle family is much more than the girl expected. Chloe began to talk about being the Marquise of Vrinicle. After a while, the maid told the girl that it was time to go. Chloe talked about going to her room and reading the books that were left. Betsy told the girl that she could take the books herself and take them to Chloe's room, but the Marquise would not let the maid do that and said that she would take them herself. The maid prevented this, and in a little while Betsy was walking down the street with Chloe, carrying the Marquise's books. Chloe looked at the beautiful garden. It looked like a small town. This family dates back to the very beginnings of the country. The family was created by the first emperor's younger brother. That's why all the family members have royal blood. This family is more great than Chloe thought. Chloe talked about what she had read in books, that it was a place with a rich history. Betsy began to tell the girl that it was, and Chloe was saying all the right things. Betsy talked about how the Marquis favoured hard-working people. So there are a lot of people who would like to work for him. Throughout the Marquis's life, there were many talented people who worked with him. One of them was even invited to join him by the emperor, and after that continued to this day. The personal maid, Alicia, was invited to work in the palace. She was even allowed to keep her previous position, but Marquis is doing so well that she declined the invitation, saying she loved her current job too much. Chloe was surprised by this. According to what the girl had read, the Rinicle family was related to the royal family. Also, only members of the junior nobility worked for the royal family. Chloe asked the maid about whether it was the same here or not. Betsy smiled and told her that it was not like that, and she was only a commoner. The girl was talking about how, in their day, everyone who works in this estate, except for a few people, are commoners. In the past, instead of ordinary maids, it was common for the Rinicles to appoint younger nobility or loyalists to the position of butler. Chloe asked the maid if that had changed long ago. Betsy answered that it hadn't, and now the Marquis occasionally said hello when he met them. Chloe thought that it might have been since he'd proposed to the girl. He treated Chloe as his future wife, and the girl knew he was an unusual man. Betsy talked about the fact that it was worth noting that most of the court ranks were aristocrats. There are also some among them who were taken into service by a commoner, but afterwards he became a nobleman. Chloe listened to all this and glanced around the room, which she promised herself not to enter. After a while, Ash came to the girl and said that he had finally found the girl. Ash looked everywhere for Chloe, but could not find her anywhere, as if she had disappeared. The guy heard that Chloe had gone to the library, but afterward Ash asked the girl why she was here now. Chloe looked at the guy and talked about the fact that he came so early, even though they have dinner together and socialise as often as they can. The guy is almost always busy anyway, so meeting him in the morning is a rarity. That day, when Katerina came, he also came home early. The girl wondered if Ash had accidentally appeared at the moment when Katerina was teaching Chloe. The guy started telling Chloe that he wanted to tell her something, but first, Ash added that he missed Chloe too. Marquis held out his hand to the girl and told her to go for a walk with him. Chloe smiled, took the guy's hand, and told him okay. Walking through the garden, the girl thought about how beautiful it was here. Ash talked about how, when he was little, he often ran away here when he was upset. Chloe asked why here. The boy answered the girl that he didn't want to run far away because he hoped that someone would find him. But at the same time, if Ash hid in the nearest garden, the maid found him quickly, so the boy always had to choose that place. When the Marquis hid, his mother always found him. People thought it wasn't a good idea to do that, but for the lad, that place was connected to his memories. Chloe realised that when this man was a child, his eyes, nose and mouth must have been similar. Maybe the eyes should have been bigger and cuter. The facial lines should have been softer. Chloe couldn't understand why she was remembering that child. It was a little girl. She had lived with Chloe when the girl was little. There are unforgettable memories associated with her. One day she suddenly disappeared. Chloe's parents were seriously upset because it was always hard to find a little girl who left without saying a word. Chloe didn't know why they lived together, not why she disappeared. One sunny morning, her parents brought her home. Chloe went swimming with her. Chloe realised that Ash was probably a very handsome boy. After a while, the boy asked the girl to stand aside for a while. Ash started to get down on one knee and then opened the ring box. After a while, the words came out of Ash's mouth, whether Chloe would marry him. The girl started asking the guy about the fact that aren't they already married? The guy smiled. Ash has been talking to Chloe about her being his wife on paper, but at the same time, the guy is a Cancer and hasn't made an official proposal, and moreover, Chloe hasn't chosen Ash yet. The guy talked about how he wants to directly propose to Chloe this time. Ash told the girl that if someone important came into his life, he wants the girl to sincerely choose him. Chloe thought that after what she has experienced, her heart is closed to love, but the girl wants to give these feelings another chance. The one who said I was everything to him proposed to the girl. Chloe began to ask the guy that if she wanted to leave here, would he let her go? Ash was a little shocked by these words, but afterwards told the girl that he would do as she wished. This man, even though he agreed to let Chloe go, it doesn't look like he'll ever want to. Maybe when Chloe leaves, he'll keep chasing her. And it's not just a game of imagination or intuition. The girl has suffered from something like this in the past. Nevertheless, Chloe began to tell Ash that she agreed to become his wife. The guy started smiling and asked the girl if she would let him wear the ring. Chloe smiled and told Ash yes. The guy apologized for only doing it now. Chloe noticed that the ring fit on her finger, as if it were a perfect fit. Ash smiled and told the girl that this ring was used by the Vrinicles as an engagement ring, passed down from generation to generation. It was made of a special metal. When the ring interacts with her body temperature, it adjusts itself to the girl's finger. Ash told the girl that it was hers now, so Chloe should wear it all the time. The guy started telling the girl that he had been planning to have a marriage ceremony for a long time. Ash started asking the girl what she thought about it. The girl started telling the guy that if he wanted to do it, she was fine with it. Ash started telling the girl that if she didn't like it, they could just celebrate everything modestly, just between the couple. The girl didn't answer anything to the guy. Then Ash decided to ask the girl what happened and why she started acting like that. Chloe answered about what she thought. She always wanted it. The girl couldn't believe that it wasn't a dream, and it was true. Chloe didn't want to miss this chance. Chloe talked about how, if it was possible, she wanted to be happy for just a little longer. Ash smiled and told the girl that she deserved it. The guy was telling the girl that she was his favorite, and it should be taken as a gift. Suddenly, Chloe began to ask the guy why he was so kind to her. The girl asked about whether it was because of her looks, or if the guy felt sorry for Chloe, or if Marquise felt some kind of responsibility. Ash asked the girl about if that was what Chloe was thinking right now. The guy told the girl that he likes her beauty, but that's not all. Ash talked about the fact that he understands Chloe's situation, and tabloid fulfills obligations. But there is something more to it all. Chloe asked the guy what it was. Ash told the girl that he knows her heart. He knows how valuable Chloe's feelings are. Ash told the girl about how he loves Chloe more than anything in the world. The girl looked at the guy in amazement and talked about how that's the reason the guy loves her. The guy looked at Chloe carefully and afterward told the girl about how, if she needed another reason to love, she could add up everything he named. But no one could explain what love is. Ash was telling the girl that he loves her because it's her, because Chloe is his favorite. The girl thought about it and then came to the conclusion that it was true and it was love. Chloe wanted to believe it, even if it was a lie. The girl had been burned too many times when someone said that he loved with all his heart. It had been a long road. Chloe didn't know why Ash's words and actions made her so happy. The girl didn't know why she wanted to believe it. Chloe didn't understand why she was crying. A few minutes later, Ash asked the girl if she wanted to go somewhere before the ceremony, since he thought that Chloe was already bored of wandering around the estate. Chloe thought about the place where he wanted to go. The only place that came to the girl's mind was the Winsella orphanage. Ash asked the girl about whether she had lived there before. Chloe answered yes. If the girl didn't accept the past, she wouldn't have a future. The past, which the girl denied, still existed, but now Chloe was ready to accept it. The girl wanted to be loved. It's so hard for Chloe to trust people, and maybe she has to face reality to move on. The night had come. Chloe was lying on her bed. There were a lot of thoughts in her head that she was thinking about. A hearty meal, a good night's sleep. Because it was a completely safe place, Chloe slept peacefully, not dreaming for a long time. But this night was a frightful one. The girl kept dreaming about the Comshars. Chloe was scared. After the girl married Joseph, not only during the day, but also at night, he continued to torment Chloe. When the girl was locked up at home, she most often just sewed. Joseph kept telling the girl to be proud that he had taken her as his wife. The girl thought it was nonsense, so she got angry and denied it. Every time Chloe interrupted, the answer received beatings and bullying. That's why the girl is afraid of the night. When Chloe is alone, she feels like this nightmare is going to consume her. Perhaps it's just imagination. The girl wondered what feeling was bothering her so much. There is no suitable place for Chloe on this estate, although there are even gardens the size of forests around. All Chloe wants is to be out in the world, somewhere other than her own room. Ash stood in front of a room that was forbidden to enter. The girl realized that if she opened this room, she would find out the secret that Ash had kept. Even though Chloe seems to almost succumb to his sweet words, she to me can open her heart so easily after so many wounds. In addition to words, he treated Chloe with affection as well, punished people who hurt the girl, told her he loved her and proposed. But even opening a door that could never be opened, if he loved Chloe, he would surely forgive. Chloe wondered if it was true love or not. Chloe wondered about the fact that even if she opened that door, would he forgive her? Chloe saw that the door was unlocked. The girl held onto the door handle and thought about what she should do, whether to open it or not. In the end, Chloe decided not to open this door. Ash didn't want to show it, but with all that, Chloe still wanted to open that door against his will. Chloe thought about how isn't that violence? Chloe didn't understand why she wanted to do that, because it's not right to do that to others, when you hate it when they do that to you. The girl thought how stupid love was, that it required a test. Chloe was still tormented by something, because on the other side, Ash had allowed the girl everything but the opening of this room. Chloe realized that maybe, if she asked, he would let her open it. Chloe decided to leave slowly. She had never doubted or tried to believe in the feelings of others before, until a lot of bad things happened to Chloe. Although Chloe realized with her mind that now it was enough, and she could plunge into happiness, her heart could not forget it all so easily. Meanwhile, not only Chloe was in the corridor, but also Ash. He was scared that the girl could open this door. She realized that if she opened it and found out about everything, what would she do? Maybe she'd be surprised, scared, despise Ash. The guy knew it wouldn't end well either way. Still, Ash realized that if it was her choice, it didn't matter that much. Ash realized that after all those terrible events, the boy should behave more carefully, as well as respect the promises of others. Ash looked at Chloe, who was walking away from the door, and said that she wasn't that greedy. Though the terrible past had left a deep wound in her heart, it could never change her good nature. Ash talked about how Chloe had never changed. Ash felt lucky, but he felt sorry for the girl at the same time. The guy didn't know what he should do to fill her heart with happiness and love. Suddenly, the guy picked himself up and called the girl. The guy asked the girl if she couldn't sleep. Chloe watched all this and was shocked. She didn't know how long he had been here. Chloe understood what must be. He saw everything she did, and the moment when Chloe hesitated, standing in front of the door. The girl answered Ash, yes. The guy began to ask Chloe if she often had nightmares. The girl replied that they were pretty rare. Ash talked to Chloe about how even though dreams were rare, they could still hurt the girl. The guy talked about how the girl promised that she would let the doctor examine her. The girl didn't say anything back, and afterward asked the guy why he woke up. Ash smiled and talked about being an owl and sleeping rough. Chloe finally realized what the matter was, because she didn't even know about it. Ash told her that when a person had a lover, he could never sleep without his caresses. Moreover, Ash had never shared a bed with someone before. Chloe talked about one day doing her part of marital duty. The girl wondered how important the descendants were for the noble family. Chloe began to tell the boy that she often thought about her obligations. Listening to this, Ash smiled and told the girl to relax her arm. The girl did it unconsciously. Then Ash started talking about how everything he was doing and wanted to do with Chloe had nothing to do with procreation. The guy talked about how there were many options. Ash replied to the girl that if she didn't want to have the baby, They could just take the baby from the orphanage. The guy told the girl that she didn't have to force herself to do something she didn't want to do. The guy was telling the girl that Chloe is someone he loves and respects. So just being around Chloe, Ash had enough already. Guy was telling the girl not to try to hide her regrets and tiredness, and no matter what it would be. Guy asked that the girl just share it with him, because Ash will always support Chloe. The guy was telling the girl that if she wasn't ready, they could postpone everything. Ash, with a smile on his face, asked the girl if she understood that. Chloe began to ask Ash if he could really do it. Marquis smiled and told the girl that he was willing to do it. Ash told Chloe that she was very important to him, and the girl couldn't even imagine how much. For some reason, Chloe felt better after his words. Ash told the girl to go to bed, and if Chloe was scared, Ash could sit up until the girl fell asleep. All Chloe's excitement disappeared as if it had never been there. The girl smiled and asked the guy to sit with her, if it was possible to do so. The morning came. Betsy asked Chloe about them going with his lordship to the orphanage. She said yes. Betsy didn't know why they were going. The maid assumed that the girl wanted to help them. It was common for nobles to show their generosity to the people, but the fact that the first place they would visit together would be an orphanage was rather strange. The maid talked about how, of course, there was nothing strange about them wanting to help, but this was their first trip together. Chloe began to tell Betsy that she had worked there before. The maid realized what was up. So Chloe wanted to visit there, either because she has a lot of pleasant memories with this place, or, on the contrary, very bad ones. And now Chloe wants to show everyone how well she lives, one or the other. Betsy was talking about how she shouldn't care, and now it was the maid's job to make Chloe as beautiful as possible. In a little while, Madame was ready. The girl thanked Betsy for her help. The girl had never thought about it when she left the orphanage. But the thing was that although the manageress squeezed all the juices out of the girl, she never left her hungry. So Chloe, and it seems that she was not the nicest person in the world, but she was also not the worst. Chloe was rarely paid for her work, but the money the manager promised her went to Stephen's treatment. She said that if Chloe wanted the money she earned, she had no problem paying every last dime. But through her tears, she asked to think of poor Stephen, to think of saving him, so Chloe agreed not to be paid in full. Hard and unpaid labour, marriage to Joseph. If you think about it now, there were a few odd points in the manageress's words. Chloe talked about how she needed to deal with the past in order to move on. The girl needs to find out if the manager was a strange person or if she really just used the girl. The orphanage. The manageress was telling the girl that Marquis Vrinicle would be arriving any moment. The manageress asked the girl if she had finished cleaning. The girl smiled and said about it being done and clean. The manageress thought that perhaps the Marquis wanted to come here to donate a tidy sum to them. After a while, the Marquis was already there. The manageress watched the carriage and saw that a large entourage had arrived with the Marquis. Suddenly the carriage began to open, and out of it looked the Marquis. Looking at the guy, the girl was shocked by his beauty. Ash stood beside the carriage and offered his help to Chloe, who was still out of sight. The manageress saw Ash's gaze and wished he was looking at her the same way. After a while, Chloe started to show up. The manager could not believe it. She did not understand what Chloe was doing here and why she was with the Marquis. The manager said that it could not be. The manager said that with Chloe's background, she could only become a mistress, but never an official wife of the Marquis. The manager decided that this girl must be just like Chloe. After a while, Chloe approached the manager Doria and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The manager immediately began to smile and asked the girl if it was her. Doria said that it couldn't be, that the girl was now Marquise. The manageress was telling Chloe that they really hadn't seen each other in a while. Doria told the girl that she looked great. Chloe talked about how she seemed grown up then. The girl thought that with her wisdom and experience, she would take care of Chloe. But it was Chloe who had to take care of the other children and everything else in the orphanage in the middle of the night. It was as if Chloe could do it all with her eyes closed. Doria had taught the girl how dangerous men could be, and she herself behaved quite differently. Chloe thought about the fact that it was very hypocritical. The girl didn't understand how she could trust someone who says one thing but does something completely different. Doria began to ask Chloe what had happened to Joseph. The girl started talking about how he had sold her at the auction. Doria smiled and asked the girl if that was how it happened. Ash immediately intervened in their conversation and said that thanks to Joseph, he now had such a wonderful wife. Doria told Ash that he was right and Chloe was a beauty. The manageress slowly approached the girl. Doria began to tell Chloe that she didn't know what exactly had happened at the girl's place, but it looked like it had turned out well enough. The manageress was telling the girl about how she looked like a princess from a fairy tale. Chloe wondered if it was a compliment or not. Suddenly, Marquise noticed Irene, the girl who was cleaning the whole orphanage. Irene noticed the girl and asked her if it was really Chloe. Marquise said about it being true her, and it is just the way it is. Chloe asked Irene why she was still in the orphanage. The girl began to talk about the fact that the manager offered her Chloe's place, so Irene stayed to work here. The girl said that she was used to it anyway, and the world was full of dangerous men. Chloe thought over these words. Marquise understood that this world is full of both good and bad, but the way Irene said it reminded the girl of those days. Irene began to ask Chloe how she was doing. Suddenly Ash walked up to the girls. Irene recognized him as Marquis and decided to leave. The girl started talking about how she remembered that she had some more laundry to do. Irene told Chloe that she was glad to see her, and then she left. The girl looked after Irene and then asked Doria how long the girl had been working here. Doria began to tell Chloe that the girl should realize how sensitive and vulnerable Irene's soul is. So the manager decided that it would be better for her to stay and work here than to be in the outside world. So Doria offered her a job at the orphanage. Chloe began to say that she was pleased to see Irene, but at the same time, Marquise wanted to talk to her alone. Doria began to tell the girl that she was rather shy, so the manager didn't know if she would agree. Doria said something about asking her about it anyway. Ash started telling the manager that if today's donation wasn't enough, he would offer a larger amount next time. The guy said that his wife was very important to him, so Ash wanted everyone to honor her request. The manageress started talking about how she would do her best to talk her down. Marquis thanked Doria. After a while, the meeting took place. Chloe sat on the bed and asked Irene how old she was. The girl replied to Chloe that she was 16. The Marquise asked why Irene had not found a job in the city like the others. The girl answered that she didn't know how to behave there, and she was scared of men. Chloe said that Irene used to go to the city without any problems. Irene began to tell Chloe that she herself should know that not all people are kind, and especially the manageress said it was better this way. Chloe looked at the girl and talked about how Irene's hair was so beautiful when she let it down. Irene interrupted the girl and said that it was too dangerous to be beautiful, and it was better to dress plainly and not attract attention at all. Irene wasn't the only one who thought so. Doria pretended to care about them, while actually destroying any vestige of self-confidence they had. And afterward, the manager was finally revealed. Chloe couldn't believe that she thought Doric was trying for her. It looked like Doria really had been leading them around all this time. Chloe didn't know how she felt, this belated realization, or anger, or maybe it was sadness. Chloe decided to ask Irene if the girl knew what had happened to Stephen after Chloe left the orphanage. Doria told Chloe that she would use the unpaid to her and receive from Joseph to cure Stephen. Irene hesitated for a moment and then said something about him dying after Chloe left. Marquise couldn't believe it. Chloe thought that the sacrifices she was making would save him. The girl talked about how it was coming out. Even after the surgery, he was still dead. Irene began to ask Chloe what kind of surgery, because Stephen had never had any surgery. The manager said that the time for surgery was long gone, so the doctor just prescribed painkillers to ease his death. Irene talked about how maybe that was the reason he was able to die peacefully in his sleep. Irene said that they'd all thought it was the best outcome, given the way Stephen had been suffering. Chloe couldn't believe he hadn't had surgery. The Marquisa was shocked. Chloe remembered exactly how the doctor had said that if he performed the operation on Stephen, he could survive. It was a complicated operation that would require several doctors. That's why it was so expensive. Doria said that the only way to get that much money was to marry Joseph, so Chloe agreed. When Doria said that even that wouldn't be enough, Chloe let her use the money that Doria owed Chloe, but Stephen died and never had the operation. Then Chloe couldn't understand where her money had gone. Irene started talking about how Doria had told her that if she continued working here, she would find a good husband, just like Chloe. Doria said that there were many dangerous men in the world and that she had to protect beautiful girls like Irene. The girl began to ask Chloe about whether the girl had really married a wonderful man. Chloe answered Irene no. Chloe talked about Doria choosing the wrong man for her, which Irene saw today. Irene asked Chloe if she was serious. The girl said yes. Suddenly, Chloe started talking about how it was now clear to her what she should do. Chloe needed more evidence to confirm her suspicions. Chloe realized that she had to intercede. The girl has no idea how to investigate such cases. However, now Chloe has someone who can help her. Past once would have been afraid to ask about it, but now it is too important. The girl needs to get over herself so that Chloe herself can move on. Chloe needs to deal with this wrong relationship so she can give a place in her heart to the people who care about the girl. Chloe began to slowly approach the guy and say that she had a request to the Marquis. Ash started asking the girl what happened. The girl began to ask the guy to help in the investigation and to investigate what was happening in the Vincella orphanage. The guy smiled and asked the girl about Chloe wanting to know if there was embezzlement, fraud, or anything else going on there as breaking the law. Chloe was surprised and didn't understand how Ash knew that. The girl asked the guy if he knew about such things. Ash smiled and talked about how he understood it a bit and was figuring it out. Finding someone's weaknesses. Investigations involve a lot of different things, and they don't always involve something bad. Chloe didn't show any hostility towards Doria, but Ash immediately assumed that the thing to look for was something bad. This means that Ash is constantly facing this kind of things. Chloe asked the guy about the fact that he often faced such things, so he is familiar with this kind of investigation. The guy smiled and said that it was so, and all those words were true. But for all that, it wasn't something that Chloe couldn't accept. Ash was not yet ready to tell Chloe about everything he had done to be at his status. The people who took what was rightfully mine got what they deserved, but telling Chloe about how they had to pay back. The time for that hadn't come yet, and Irene was so and suffered through the problems Chloe had personally encountered. But now Chloe was okay, because Ash was with her. Always when the guy was in pain or hard, he thought of the girl. Though it didn't last long, but Chloe was the embodiment of warmth and his first love, so Ash felt sorry for her. The boy wished he could have found her sooner. Ash was sorry that Chloe had to go through all that misery. Ash was sorry that she had met him. Chloe was telling the girl that it had been quite some time. Chloe told Ash that she was not as good a person as the guy said. Marquis was surprised by this, because Chloe had never hidden feelings in such a way before. Ash remembered Chloe barely laughing and shining brighter than the sun. The girl was a ray of light in the guy's life then, but if Chloe changed, it doesn't mean that her feelings for the guy changed. Ash talked to the girl about how adorable it was to him. Ash was telling Chloe that he wasn't saying it to put Chloe in a difficult position. Ash just wanted to say how much Chloe meant to him. The guy understood that Chloe was already trying to figure things out, so Ash didn't want to become another burden for Chloe. The guy could tell Chloe how he found her later. Ash told Chloe that he had honoured the girl's request. Chloe thanked Marquis for being so helpful. The guy smiled and told the girl to address him. The girl could call the guy my lord. Ash kept telling Chloe that when she said my lord, it sounded a little cold. Hearing that, the girl said okay, and she wouldn't do that anymore. The guy talked about how it might be hard at first, but then Chloe would be able to get used to it. The guy talked to the girl about how he wasn't asking her to love him. Ash was just asking Chloe to let Marquis become Chloe's best friend. The girl started telling the guy about how he was already the closest person to the girl. Ash looked at the girl and smiled. He realized that Chloe would never know how long he had waited for this moment. Ash told Chloe that she couldn't even imagine how happy the guy was to hear that. A few days later, the orphanage. The manageress was sitting in her office, thinking about the fact that the Marquis was coming today, and Chloe would be there with a guy. The fact that Doria would have to meet Chloe again pissed her off. She felt like a witch from a fairy tale. She'd have to see Chloe, the girl she thought she had sent to the abyss of hell, along with the most handsome man she had ever seen. The only thing that soothed Doria's anger was the round sum the Marquis had donated last time. Doria spent most of the donations and grants from the Empire on the children of the orphanage. The money she got from keeping double-entry records might seem like a huge sum to most people, but Doria considered it a worthy reward for her work. Doria didn't even think that Joseph could sell Chloe, since he was so obsessed with the girl that the manager thought he would never let her go. Doria talked about how who would have thought that the girl's husband would be a titled man. The manager understood that Irene could not have the same fate. Doria decided to sell Irene not as a wife, but as something worse. The manageress was too kind to Chloe. If Doria had sent Chloe to a place where there was no escape, the manager wouldn't want to see Chloe in such a high position. Doria understood the fact that there are plenty of places that need good girls. All Doria has to do is sell Irene to one of the worst ones. After a while, Irene came to Doria and told her that the Marquis and Marquess had arrived. Doria told Irene that she'd be right out. It's barely been a week since the last oasis, so Chloe's probably just here to show off her status. She's pretending like she's here to show her gratitude to the shelter. She's probably just pretending to be a generous Marquess. It pissed Doria off, but there was nothing she could do about it. The girl talked about the fact that if she wanted a donation, she should keep to herself. After a while, Doria was sitting with Chloe and Marquis. The manager began to tell them that they had no idea how long the girl had been looking for parents for that sick boy. Doria began to ask if they remembered Billy. The girl said that he had been adopted by a wonderful couple a couple months ago. Doria asked Chloe and Marquis about whether it wasn't wonderful. The manager talked about how she'd been trying to find him the right parents for months. Chloe asked Doria about if that was it. The manageress didn't understand what the girl wanted from her. Doria thought that Chloe was just nodding in response, as usual, but the girl got an unusual look. Doria thought that after her blurb they would give more money than planned. The manageress hesitated a little and decided to say something else. But she was interrupted by Chloe, who asked the manager if she knew how Chloe had lived after her marriage to Joseph. Doria began to tell the girl that it hardly mattered now. The manageress decided to ask Chloe a question. Doria asked Chloe if she thought it was rude to discuss her ex-husband in front of her new husband. Ash began telling the girl that if that was what his beloved wanted to talk about, he was fine with it. Chloe talked to Doria about Joseph humiliating and beating her. Chloe was never allowed to go out and talk to anyone. Chloe was locked in a room and forced to work, starving the sea. The girl lived as Joseph's toy for 3 years. Doria said she understood, and afterward added and told Chloe that she didn't know he was such a man. The manageress talked to the girl about how hard it was for her. The girl started to ask Doria what she was down for with the money she got from Joseph. The manageress was a little miffed and didn't know what to say. And after pausing a bit, Doria talked about how she had spent it on Stephen's surgery. The manageress said that the girl herself was well aware of everything. Chloe thought about it, that's how. The girl talked about how she had heard that Stephen never had any surgery and died on painkillers. Doria asked the girl who had told her that, and if it was Irene, she had just made a mistake. The manageress talked about how she wanted Stephen to have surgery, but the doctor said it was too late. Chloe started talking about what it meant if Stephen didn't have surgery, whether Doria should return the unpaid money to Chloe and the money she had received from Joseph. Doria began to talk about how she had tried to return them, but had been unable to get in touch with Joseph. The property manager couldn't do anything about it. Chloe started asking Doria where the money was now. The manageress started laughing and saying that she didn't think Chloe would be so petty after becoming a Marquess. Doria started to say that she had spent it on the orphanage, but if Chloe wanted it, she could give it all back. Chloe noticed the fact that she didn't have a shred of regret in her. Doria thinks she's done nothing wrong. A short time later, Chloe brought Dr. Roberts notes regarding Stephen's illness. The chances of the patient surviving the surgery are high, but the manager refused her in tears, citing that the orphanage did not have that kind of money. Doria looked at all this and said that it was some misunderstanding and it was not true. And afterwards, Chloe decided to show the financial report of the orphanage, and it nowhere states the amount Doria received from Joseph, nor the money paid to Chloe. There are also inconsistencies about the amount of money received and the torrent of it to the orphanage, but at the same time, the amount of Doria's savings and trinkets kept increasing. Doria began to ask the girl how she could know about it. The manager screamed that it was illegal. Chloe began to say that her husband Marcus has the right to such investigations, granted by the emperor. Ash can investigate independently of the city guards. Chloe talked about the fact that everything was within the law. The girl talked about how, even digging a little, it was clear to Chloe that the list was actually much more extensive. Doria didn't understand how she dared accuse her if she was a good person. Doria talked to Chloe about how she was the reason she had become a marquess. The manageress talked about how everything ended well in the end. Chloe talked to Doria about how it wouldn't cure the pain she was feeling. Doria would never have sold Chloe if she had felt even the slightest bit sorry for Chloe. And then Chloe wouldn't have to live her life thinking it was all her fault. Chloe asked Doria about whether she had ever been beaten up. The girl asked Doria about knowing if she knew what it was like to tremble in fear of someone stronger than you, threatening and beating you for no reason. Chloe talked about how you start to lose yourself. You want to cry, but you can't for fear of more beatings. You start asking for forgiveness even though you have done nothing wrong. You are always guilty, and at some point you start to think that you are really doing everything wrong, even though you are not. You can't do anything but beg for forgiveness because the person who is beating you won't stop until you apologize because you feel that if you do otherwise, you will die. 3 years is a long enough period of time. Even if Chloe had been kept in confinement, the will to live would have been much stronger. Chloe lived for 3 years, begging for mercy, all because Doria sold Chloe for a handful of coins. The manageress began to ask Chloe what she meant. Doria replied that she was doing it all for Chloe's good. Doria wanted Chloe to suffer, and not just wanted her to suffer, but ended up doing so. Chloe used to think that it was all her fault, but now the girl realized that nothing was her fault. Part of the reason Chloe should only be blamed is that she trusted people like Doria too much. But would Chloe be in this position if people weren't intentionally trying to deceive her? Just because Chloe believed Doria's lies doesn't mean that what she did wasn't wrong. Chloe began to tell Doria that it was time to take full responsibility. In Doria's mind, she was always above Chloe. Chloe was beautiful, smart, kind. Doria felt a sense of power, controlling a girl as special as Chloe. But now Chloe is threatening Doria like she's the witch from the fairy tale. Doria started yelling at Chloe about how everything was right, and she sold the girls to Joseph. Doria talked about how he was a scumbag, yet he wanted Chloe very badly. The manageress told Stephen to ask Chloe to save his life. Doria said that Chloe would do anything to save him. Chloe ended up doing just that. The manager began to tell Chloe that she was sorry she had to go through all that, because she didn't think Joseph would beat Chloe up like that. Doria began to talk about how it was only because of all this that the girl met a new, wonderful husband. Chloe was able to overcome all the hardships and met her prince as if in a fairy tale. Doria talked about how you could say it was because of her, because she sold Chloe to Joseph. Doria asked Chloe about maybe they would keep it that way. Chloe began to talk about how if Marcus hadn't saved her, who knows how many more horrible things would have happened to her. Chloe could have died without ever meeting Marcus. The girl can only thank her husband, Ash Vrinikler, for who Chloe has become, and Doria has nothing to do with it. Chloe asked the superintendent not to kid herself. The girl talked about how Doria would get the punishment she deserved. Chloe began to say that she was most interested in hearing what Doria's fiancé had to say about it. The manager didn't realize who she was to threaten her. Suddenly, someone called out to Doria. The girl couldn't believe it was her husband's voice. The girl began to ask Gray how long he had been standing there. The manager began to tell her husband that her former pupil had become a marquess and decided to visit her, to choose her as a person. But it seems that there was a slight misunderstanding. The manager realized that Gray wasn't due to arrive until tomorrow at the earliest. Doria tried to send all the important people away, because Chloe's arrival didn't bode well. Doria didn't understand how it had happened. Gray was the first person Doria had ever had a romantic relationship with. It was a girl's first love. Doria realized that she couldn't lose him like that. The manager started calling her husband, and tried to explain everything to him. But the husband interrupted Doria and said something about how he had heard enough already. The manageress was frightened and began to ask the boy what he meant. The girl asked her husband to let her explain everything. Doria didn't know what could be said. The girl talked about how words can be misunderstood if you don't hear the whole story. Gray began to tell the girl that he didn't seem to be a good judge of character. The guy talked about how he thought he had met the love of his life, but as it turned out, the guy was wrong. Gray thought that Doria had always selflessly cared for the children because she loved them. Doria made a point of saying that she did, and it was just as he had said. Gray started yelling about what kind of person was even capable of dragging someone into an unwanted marriage, and even more so because of money. The husband couldn't believe that the girl had done it for her own gain. Gray started talking about how the engagement was off, and if Doria wanted compensation for the inconvenience, she would get it. Doria wanted to say something else, but the guy interrupted her and told her about what he thought. Doria was not counting on a large sum of money. It was all over for her. Her position as manager, a man who could drown her in his love. No one knew what awaited her now. Cold prison cell. Big penalties. Doria began to think about if she had been as beautiful as Chloe, things would have turned out differently. Maybe Gray would just turn a blind eye to such a trifle. Gray was telling the girl that he never thought about Doria not being pretty. Gray thought that Doria's heart was even more beautiful, but apparently the guy was wrong. After a while, Gray started to leave and told Doria that he had nothing more to say to the girl. Doria tried to shout something else to the guy, but he didn't listen and just left. The door closed. Doria began to ask Chloe if she was satisfied with taking everything away from her. Chloe answered Doria no. Doria started calling names and running at Chloe, but the manager's hand was quickly taken by Ash, and he told Doria to be quiet, or he would rip her tongue out. It was beyond Doria's strength. Her gut told her that it was dangerous to continue, and the girl was finished. After a while, Chloe and the Marquis sat in the carriage. What the girl realized was that she was meaner than Chloe thought. Even calling her human seemed wrong. Even when Doria had done all those terrible things, she pretended to be white and fluffy. Chloe couldn't believe that she was so hypocritical. Doria had insisted on her innocence from the beginning. She didn't have an ounce of regret for what Chloe had suffered for years after she'd sold her to Joseph. Chloe would have kept listening to Doria like that if Ash hadn't stepped in. The guy smiled and told the girl that if she needed to rest, they could stop. Chloe began to tell her boyfriend that right now she wasn't as at ease as she'd imagined. It was because Doria hadn't begged for forgiveness. Chloe felt that she felt better after she had spoken, but she still felt empty inside. It was probably because the others who were guilty hadn't been punished. Chloe asked Ash about his thinking that way. The boy answered yes, and said that he felt better when he dealt with everyone who had done wrong to him. Chloe thought about it for a while and decided that it was just because they were a little different. But Chloe didn't experience the same things that Ash did. She didn't experience the same kind of pleasure as Ash did when he dealt with the people who blizzarded in his place and didn't feel the comfort of revenge against them. Ash began to ask the girl how it was that she ended up in the orphanage. The girl began to talk about how after her parents died, a couple who lived in the neighborhood came one day. She knew who they were because they visited them periodically. Chloe was small and naive, and they offered to help the girl. They said that after a bad investment, her parents had gotten into debt, so they sold their estate to pay off the debts and got Chloe a place in the orphanage. The girl didn't know how to explain to her how she felt then. It seemed as if the girl was sucked into a tornado. A small suitcase was all Chloe had. When she arrived at the orphanage, shivering, Ash began to talk about the fact that their home was on the outskirts of the capital. His father preferred to be close to nature than in the crush of the city's crowds. He wanted to settle further away, but all the deals were in the capital, so he had to settle nearby. Ash asked the girl about settling near the capital. Ash talked about how it took them all day. To get there and past, they saw many other shelters. Chloe talked about how she would like to believe that they had good conditions there. Ash began to ask the girl about what she was saying about the past tense for a reason. The guy asked about the fact that it was because Chloe also thought that they had acted strangely. The girl told the guy yes. Chloe felt as if the blindfold had been removed from her eyes and she could finally see. Ash started telling Chloe that if the girl wanted to, he could investigate the case too. Chloe told the guy that if they were really trying to help Chloe in good faith, Ash wanted to thank them. The girl talked about how she understands what Ash means, but for now, Chloe wants to give all of her attention to the upcoming tea party. The girl talked about how she knows she still has a lot to do, but since Chloe will be introduced as the Marquis's wife, a girl has to give her best. The guy smiled and told Chloe that she really was the most wonderful woman in the world. The girl started to tell the guy that she still wasn't sure if Chloe felt the same way that Marquis felt about the girl. But Chloe is grateful to Ash for everything he does for Chloe, and every day Ash becomes more and more special to the girl. The girl talked about the fact that solving the problems of her past is also important, but it is much more important for Chloe to love the guy as much as he loves Chloe. Ash looked at the floor and then started to call out to the girl. Chloe didn't have time to say anything yet, but the guy got up and kissed the girl. After Chloe came back the rest of the day, she spent at a book in bed. The doctor said that the girl had a fever due to fatigue and stress. The feeling of betrayal she felt from the people she trusted couldn't just go away. Her whole body ached, as if all those negative feelings she'd experienced because of her naivete and to which she'd grown accustomed were blades wounding every inch of her body. Though these thoughts were eating her up inside, she wasn't alone. She was comforted by the warmth of the man who held her hand. She desperately clung to the hand that saved her from the endless nightmare. The walls she had erected in her heart to protect herself began to crumble little by little. The girl thought about the forbidden room. Chloe understood that if Ash so desperately wanted to hide something from the girl, then it was necessary to respect his wish. Everyone has their secrets, and Chloe should trust him. To consider him a bad person would be wrong. If a person has made a mistake, it doesn't mean that he can't change. Once Chloe decided to trust the guy. As if by some miracle, Chloe felt better. A day later, the girl's fever went away. When she felt better, all her attention Chloe paid to the upcoming preparations. The tea party was 4 days away. The tea party was to be held in the name of the Marquis. Countless invitations came to the Vrinical estate every day. Someone in Ash's position could afford to accept or decline any of them. As soon as the rumours about the Marquis's marriage spread, more invitations began to arrive. Chloe chose the most beautiful invitation. It was not a large-scale tea party, like in the palace, but it was the first event that Chloe would attend as a Marquis. If Chloe could get over it, she felt as if she could handle any other invitation she would receive in the future. The dress and shoes had already been bought. Men do not attend such events, so tea parties are for ladies only. This was a challenge she had to face alone. Ash touched the girl's forehead and talked about how the fever seemed to have gone away. The guy started asking the girl how she was feeling. Chloe said that she was feeling better, and it was all thanks to Ash. The girl stood a few meters away from Ash and said that she had something to tell him. The guy started to ask the girl what it was and what had happened. Chloe told the guy that she wanted to tell Ash before the tea party. The girl was telling the guy that she would like to share her bed with Ash. The guy was shocked. At first, Chloe felt gratitude, later suspicion. But the more Ash showed his love to the girl, the more Chloe began to believe him. In his actions and words, Chloe feels sincerity, but for all that Ash can be different. The guy began to ask the girl if she was sure of this decision. Chloe answered yes. Ash began to say that Chloe has only just recovered. The guy suggested that they discuss it with the girls when she was fully recovered. Chloe replied tomorrow. Ash didn't understand what Chloe wanted to do. The girl talked about the fact that she felt better, so she wanted to spend tomorrow night together. Ash smiled and told the girl that there was no need for her to force herself. Chloe replied to the guy that she didn't force herself to do it, and it was her own wish. Chloe said that at the tea party, she wanted to appear as Ash's wife in every sense of the word. Ash smiled and talked about how he didn't even realize that his wife was that nice. The guy was telling the girl that he knew it wasn't easy for Chloe to say that, so the guy thanked the girl for having the courage to say it. The guy was worried that if he started talking about it first, Chloe would feel pressured, but Ash would dare to have this conversation first. Chloe might have to go overboard to say it. Ash was telling the girl to come to his room tomorrow night. Ash told Chloe that he would tell Alicia to get everything ready. The guy couldn't wait for tomorrow anymore. Ash couldn't believe that Chloe was the first to bring it up. The guy was only going to start talking about it after she had settled in. But Ash couldn't imagine that she would say it so directly. The boy said that was just the way Chloe used to be. Chloe never liked to beat around the bush. She did things quickly, but carefully. But the guy still thought they needed to hold off on that. Ash wanted the girl to love him even more, but Chloe said she wanted to share her bed with him first. The guy didn't understand why he couldn't stop balking, even if as a thank you, or if she decided to do it out of a sense of duty. Ash is still excited that they can truly be husband and wife. The next night, Chloe was prepared, and they went to the Marquis' room. After a while, Alicia was already telling my lord that Chloe had arrived at the place. The girl wondered if everything would be all right. Chloe thought about what would happen if she upset him, or if Ash was disappointed in the girl. The girl began to calm herself down and talked about how Ash wasn't like Joseph. Chloe talked about how everything would be okay because it was Ash. The girl walked into Ash's room. The atmosphere in this room was just like the guy's. After a while, Ash approached the girl. The guy smiled and looked at the girl, and Chloe was very much embarrassed. Ash smiled and told the girl that he hadn't done anything yet, and Chloe should relax. The guy told the girl that if she was very nervous, they could have a glass of wine each. Chloe refused. Ash started asking the girl if she could come closer. The girl sat down next to Ash and looked at the floor. The guy saw all this and told the girl that if she didn't want to do it, she could safely tell the guy. Chloe was telling Ash that it wasn't about that at all. The girl tried to remove all doubts, because after all, she was the one who suggested it. The guy was kissing the girl, smiling, and afterwards he fell down on her. Chloe decided to just freeze. Suddenly the girl began to hear voices that scared her. Chloe screamed and said that Ash was not like that, and he was different, but the girl screamed that she didn't want to die. Suddenly, Chloe stepped out of the cordon and heard Ash yelling to her. The guy was telling the girl that everything was fine and she was safe. Chloe began to apologize immediately. Ash calmed the girl down and told her that everything was fine, and the girl just needed to breathe into the bag. The guy talked to the girl about how she had nothing to apologize for, and after Ash said that he would be with the girl until she felt better. For Chloe, intimacy was impossible even with the man she loved. She felt disgusted. She felt like she was going to throw up, and Chloe was scared. Chloe started telling my lord about how sorry she was for disappointing him. The guy asked the girl about Chloe being so scared that she started calling the guy my lord again. Ash talked to the girl about how he wasn't forcing or blaming Chloe. The guy asked the girl if she would let him look at her face. Chloe saw the way he tried and decorated the room. The girl couldn't believe that it was all for naught. In tears, Chloe asked the guy why he was so patient with her. If it were Joseph, even on his last breath, but he would still do what he wanted, Chloe didn't doubt it for a second. And her, whether Chloe passed out or not, he would have dropped everything and left, slamming the door shut. Chloe talked about how she had to accept the fact that he wasn't like Joseph. The girl talked about how he's not just different, but an order of magnitude better. Ash talked about how that doesn't mean that he never gets angry or doesn't have emotions. The guy talked about how he was just trying to keep it together when he thought about how much the girl cared about him. The girl talked about how, if she told him what happened that night, would the girl be able to get rid of that guilt that was eating Chloe from the inside out? Will the girl even be able to erase these memories of the past, stop blaming the shoot for something that wasn't her fault? Chloe thought about what if Ash didn't believe the girl. Ash was telling the girl that he knows what the girl went through, but at the same time the guy doesn't know everything in detail. Consequently, Marquis can't know exactly how Chloe feels, but one thing the guy knows for sure, it's that it's not Chloe's fault. Ash tells the girl that she doesn't need to force herself. Ash is grateful for Chloe's kindness. After all, the girl was trying to do something she was afraid to do because she was worried about Ash. The boy was talking to the girl about how he wanted them both to enjoy themselves. Ash was talking about how if the pleasure was only for him, then there would be no difference between Ash and the animal. Chloe realized this was it. Joseph was an animal. an animal that couldn't control its desires. Chloe was telling the guy that it wasn't because of him, and not because the girl didn't like the marqueur. Rather, it was the opposite. Chloe wanted to do it because she loves Ash. Chloe talked about how she was scared and didn't know what to do, and how to overpower herself. The girl was scared because of the fact that Ash would be like Joseph after their intimacy. Ash asked the girl about the fact that Chloe thought the guy would be as tough as Joseph. The girl looked down at the floor and said yes. Ash started telling Chloe about how he would never do that to a girl. The guy was telling the girl about how she didn't need to force herself to do something that Chloe didn't want to do. The guy's heart started to hurt, and it wasn't because Chloe didn't trust Ash, but because the guy felt sorry for the girl when Ash saw how deep Chloe's wounds were. The guy called the girl over and hugged her and told her to just sleep tonight. Ash told the girl to forget about her fears. Ash was telling the girl to remember that she was the most important person in the world to Ash, or Chloe should think about the desserts they would eat tomorrow. The guy was telling the girl to imagine how sweet and delicious they would be. Chloe started to cry. Ash looked at that and talked about how he could bring that horrible man here, and Chloe would do whatever she wanted to him. Chloe was crying and talking about how she didn't want to see him even for revenge. The girl just wanted to go on with her life as if he never existed. Chloe talked about the fact that at the very least, if he had any common sense, Joseph would not look for Chloe. It didn't mean that the girl had forgiven him, just that Chloe didn't want to waste her time on someone who never asked for forgiveness. Chloe wanted to look to the future and not dwell on the past. The girl wanted to look into their bright future. Chloe hugged the guy and talked about how it was all thanks to him. Thanks to Ash, the girl has dreams about the future at all. That night they did not become one as a married couple, and Chloe didn't know when they would become, or if they would become at all. But Chloe knew for sure that Ash would never force the girl and would just wait. Ash told the girl that if she wanted it, then it was really okay. But Ash said that they really needed to rest. It had been a long day for Chloe. The girl said okay and began to rest. Selfless love, how wonderful and warming it is. Tea party day. Chloe was to attend Countess Nyborn's tea party. Her social standing was appropriate, as was her guest list. The Countess was known for having good relations with all the ladies of high society. It was not a bad chance for the first appearance in high society as a marquise. The reason Chloe had chosen a ladies-only event was one. It's an opportunity to make a good impression on the ladies before attending an event meant for everyone. If Ash was there, they would pretend to be white and fluffy just because of his title being higher. So it would be easier to recognize their real selves if there were only women here. Chloe was worried, not only about the tea party, but also about the wedding date. Ash was talking to Chloe about how they need to set a date for their wedding. The guy talked about how the emperor wants to pick it himself, but if there is a special day that Chloe wants to pick, they can have it on that day. Chloe was a little scared and told the guy that they could spend everything at the will of the emperor. Ash told the girl to think about it anyway, because Chloe's loving husband is quite capable of pulling off such a thing. The girl was so ashamed after that night. Because of this, Chloe could not normally look the guy in the eyes. The girl did not know if she was worthy of such happiness. Chloe is happy, but at the same time nervous. But now Chloe realized that she should concentrate on the upcoming tea party. Betsy looked at the girl with admiration. The maid told Chloe that even a modest dress looked wonderful on a girl. Chloe told Betsy that it was a good thing. The girl talked about how she couldn't pass up the opportunity and get back to normal. The girl looked at the teddy bear and talked about how she could handle it. The Countess of Newborn's estate was famous for its beautiful gardens. The Countess had 2 children, 8 years old and 6 years old. She was not extraordinary in every sense of the word, but her aura calmed all the people around her. The Countess thanked the girl for keeping them company today. The Countess told Chloe that she was beautiful, as they say about her, and to meet the girl was a great honour for the Countess. Chloe thanked everyone for the invitation. The girl said that she was glad to have the opportunity to enjoy such a wonderful tea party. The Countess asked the girl about why they should not go to the others. Chloe saw their looks. The girl was much more nervous than she had realised, but at the same time, the girl couldn't show it. Chloe couldn't make a mistake. Chloe realized that it would not end with one bad mood. At stake was the name and honor of the Vrinical family. The girl was chatting with everyone, and suddenly she saw an elderly woman. The woman started talking about the fact that she had come here because she heard that there would be someone who didn't fit her position. The woman immediately noticed Chloe and told the girl that this must be the girl. What Chloe noticed was that the girl was clearly hostile. Chloe noticed almost all Sternloff of imperial and noble families. The girl had studied their biographies so often that almost all the pages had been erased. Chloe remembered reading a description that described this woman exactly. Chloe spoke to the woman about being honored to meet the woman. It was the Honorable Empress Caroline Elsa Ridegaya, widow of the previous emperor. The girl spoke of her name being Chloe Vrinical. The empress began to tell Chloe that she had not given her permission to speak. Chloe began to apologize. The girl talked about how she was just excited to be there. The empress began to tell Chloe that she had heard so many rumors that she just had to see everything in person. The empress was talking about how everything was clear to her now, and she had just wasted her time. The empress was telling Chloe that she was just an ordinary commoner. Suddenly, the empress began to be called by the countess. The girl made a bow and spoke of how honored she was to have Her Highness attend such an unimportant tea party. The countess was telling the empress that if she would allow it, the girl would escort her to her seat. The empress began to tell the countess that there was no need for that. People began to tell the countess that standards had dropped since their last meeting, since the girl was able to invite such a commoner. The widowed empress was definitely someone to be reckoned with, but in the same way the countess could not afford to fall out of favour with the marquis. In such a position, it is important to remain neutral. The empress began to say that they should prepare a carriage for her, as she had been spoiled. The empress was saying that it made no sense for her to stay, since it's a tea party with low-grade guests. It didn't turn out as badly as Chloe had expected. She didn't insult or hit Chloe, though the girl had expected it and thought she would. She ignored Chloe's very existence, but in doing so, she at least spoke to her. The fact that the empress came uninvited indicates that she was interested, whether that interest was positive or negative. The fact was that it was there. Of course, that could mean that the empress would make the rest of Chloe's days not so good. The girl talked about how it was much worse in high society simply because of her desire. Chloe knew that at this tea party there would be someone set against the girl, but Chloe could not even imagine that it would be someone from the imperial family. The girl talked about the fact that even though she was a marquess, but it was normal to stay away from the person who had just been criticized by the former empress. Chloe didn't count on that, but the girl couldn't help it. Chloe began to say that given the fact that this was Chloe's first tea party, the girl must be nervous. Chloe began to call Countess Eloina Hatweed, and afterwards to say that she was glad that at least she had spoken to Chloe. The girl began to ask the countess if she would mind if Chloe joined her. The countess replied that she certainly didn't mind. The countess began to say that she knew it must be hard for Chloe to hear such rude words, but Chloe was holding up pretty well, and it was all thanks to her lessons. Chloe talked about how it should be natural for a countess. Eleona talked about how she knew she looked confident, but the girl remembered how she didn't bat an eye. Countess remembered the night before her debut as countess. The countess had told Chloe about how well she was doing. The girl would never have thought it would be members of the imperial family. Perhaps they had more in common than Chloe thought. The girl thanked the countess for this. The countess said that there was a certain reason why the Honourable Empress had decided to attend the tea party. The countess asked Chloe if she wished to recognise her. Chloe mentioned that she would not mind. The countess talked about how it was no big deal, so the countess would leave it up to her. Chloe told the countess that she understood. The Honourable Empress might be hostile to Chloe because of her personal experience. Chloe began to ask the countess what she meant. Eleona talked about the fact that in addition to the current Emperor Rudolph, she had 2 other daughters. The younger daughter, Olivia, cut all ties with the imperial family and left the capital, to be with the commoner she fell in love with. Her family begged her to stay, but she gave up her title to marry him and become a commoner herself. Chloe realized that she understood, and the fact is that there was a marriage against the will of the family, and it must be very difficult for Her Majesty to even just see her daughter. perhaps the Empress feels that her daughter has defamed the honor of the imperial family. Or she could be even angrier because of her love for her daughter. Either way, Chloe now knows that the Empress came all this way just to humiliate the girl. The Countess continued and spoke of how Olivia died away from here shortly afterward, and the Empress's husband, who tried to escape after her death, was also caught. Chloe was shocked that he was trying to escape. Eleonor talked about how no one knows why he wanted to do that, or where he got the idea in his head. It's not like her husband was the killer. Nevertheless, the case was closed. If the daughter was alive, she would be around Eleonor's age, so it happened quite a while ago. After that, the Honourable Empress was always against marriages between different social classes. Chloe said about the fact that she understood everything. The Countess began to tell the girl to hold on, because those who are not familiar with Chloe may be wary of the girl. But sooner or later, someone will become friendly when they get to know Chloe better. The Countess had talked about how there was no one in this world who was loved by everyone. So Eleonor had told the girl to ignore those who didn't like her so much. According to what Chloe had studied, Countess Hatweed was neutral in her alliances. Things were the same in the Vrinicle family, but it couldn't be said that they remained completely neutral. They preferred to lean towards those who were more helpful at certain times. But here she was, the first to reach out, while the others tried to avoid her. The Countess spoke of what she would say that today she had gained something incredibly valuable. Chloe was stunned by the Countess's kindness. Eleonor would look at Chloe and talk about how incredible she really was. After a while, Ash was in the carriage. They say that the Honourable Empress made an interesting spectacle at the tea party today. Ash was sure she spoke calmly, but her words were like daggers. The Honourable Empress is known for her beliefs. The guy was sure that she did not allow even the slightest possibility that the same Ash Vrinicle could fall in love. Most likely, the Empress believes that the guy bought Chloe from some ulterior motives, or that Chloe is using the guy to climb the social ladder. The Empress can't bring herself not to look for ulterior motives, or she'll start blaming herself for her daughter's death. Without realizing it, she was showing her anger to escape from the growing guilt. The guy talked about how she was just a tired older woman. Ash wondered if Chloe was okay, and how she was even coping there. Considering how caring and kind-hearted the girl was, Ash was afraid she would just keep things to herself. After a while, the guy ordered the carriage to stop. The guy talked about how it looked like a filthy rodent had slipped past the mayos of the guards. The boy needs to keep his eyes open at all times, or Ash would have died long ago. Ash pried open the bushes and saw Joseph sitting near a tree. Ash thought about Joseph deciding that the area was so big that he wouldn't get caught. Joseph looked away, searching for someone with his eyes. Meanwhile, Ash was behind him and kicked Joseph in the back with his foot. The guy got scared and started asking Ash who he was. Marquis began to tell Joseph that he could not understand why Joseph was hiding in Ash's garden, given that their deal is long over. Ash was telling Joseph what the guy thought. Joseph 8NR knew that a century ago, trespassing on nobles' territory was punishable by death. Joseph smiled. And then he began to tell Ash that my lord was mistaken, and that everything was not as he thought. Joseph said that he was just worried that he had sold Ash a girl who was too unbelievable. The Marquis didn't like it, and told Joseph to cut the crap and stop it all. Ash started telling Joseph to tell him that he was sniffing around like a rat after the guy had been paid a decent amount of money. The guy couldn't understand what was wrong with him, because he thought it was just another lord being a sissy. Joseph began to talk about Camille finding out what a noble family Chloe had fallen into, though it took longer because of the aristocrats involved. Nevertheless, it wasn't that hard because their wedding was now on everyone's lips, though the rumours were very different from what actually happened. No one said anything about Ash buying his wife at an auction. On the contrary, it was said that Ash had fallen in love with a commoner who was in trouble, and now the guy is grooming her and even got the Emperor's permission to marry Chloe. Even among the nobility of the upper echelon, it made a lot of noise. Joseph thought about what would happen if they found out that Ash had bought the girl. Joseph realised something about the Marquis not wanting his secret to be known, and Chloe of course too. Joseph realised that Ash would definitely pay him to keep quiet, He realized that it was easy money. Joseph was waiting for an opportunity to threaten Chloe with it, since she was easier to manipulate. Joseph talked about how the girl would have been so scared that she would have rushed to get the money. Joseph began to tell Ash that he just wanted to know how his ex-wife was doing. Joseph talked to her about how it was hard for him to just talk like that with Ash looking at her like that. Ash had mentioned to Joseph that he didn't recall telling a scumbag like Joseph who he was. But considering how Joseph had managed to sneak into his cell, Joseph must have been able to find out. The guy was asking about her lover's deeds. Joseph didn't understand how Ash realized this, and knew about it. Ash was telling Joseph that, the guy must have run out of money. The guy was telling Joseph about how he better disappear from here. Ash was telling Joseph not to even think about seeing Chloe again. Joseph started talking about how it seems like Ash really, really loves Chloe. Joseph was telling Ash about how Chloe is not as perfect as Ash seems to think she is. After a while, Marquis started telling Joseph to bugger off. Joseph began to ask Ash if he knew how many men Chloe had seduced with her looks. Chloe had once fooled Joseph with her innocent face. Joseph talked about how in those moments she flirted and sucked up. But really, Chloe, he better than a log, because she doesn't respond to anything. Joseph talked about how Chloe doesn't even know how to satisfy a man. The guy told that once Chloe went to her neighbour's house to borrow a needle from her. Joseph talked about how he knew it was just an excuse, and Chloe wanted to meet her husband. Joseph meant that he had managed to beat all those bad habits out of the girl. Guy talks about how he's worried about Ash, which is why he's here. Joseph is just worried that such a prominent man has fallen into Chloe's trap. Joseph talked about how if he didn't keep an eye on Chloe, she would act like a sellout. Ash began to slowly walk up to Joseph and tell the guy that he understood what the guy meant. Ash began to ask Joseph why he should care. Marquis was telling the guy that he loved the girl. Joseph didn't understand what was going on, because things should be very different. Ash was telling Joseph that so far his beloved wife didn't want anything to happen to the guy. So if Ash kills Joseph now, it could deprive Chloe of the opportunity to personally get even with Joseph. And then Chloe would be tormented for the rest of her life by the memories of what Joseph had done to her. Ash began to tell the boy to get out of his garden if Joseph cared about his life. Joseph wanted to say something. When Ash kicked the guy, he was caught off guard. Joseph was talking about how now that he could see Ash, he might be able to win the fight. The guy realized that there was no one else around. Joseph was sure he could beat Ash, for he'd been in a lot of alley fights. Even a handsome aristocrat like him would be more humble after a good beating. Joseph started picking something up off the ground, and after a while Joseph started calling Ash and talking about how he had a motto, and it sounded like an eye for an eye. And after that, Joseph decided to run at Ash. After a while, shouting was heard. Ash didn't understand how Joseph dared to enter the noble's territory and try to attack an aristocrat. The guy was talking about how he was a stupid and ignorant idiot. Ash didn't understand how he dared to trespass on noble's territory and try to attack an aristocrat. Joseph quickly gave up and ran away after Ash quickly threatened him. If the guy had things his own way, Ash would have dealt with him a long time ago, but Ash promised Chloe that he would consider her wishes. If Chloe wanted revenge on him, the guy would definitely help Chloe. Even if the girl wants to forgive him, Ash will accept that wish as well, but Ash won't just let Joseph get away with it anyway. Scum like him doesn't ship to go up against someone he considers weaker. Ash could only hope that Joseph wouldn't come back. The guy talked about Joseph thanking fate for only one broken arm. Ash decided he needed to send someone to keep an eye on a guy like that. If this piece of shit dared to pull anything else after the warning, Ash wouldn't just let him go next time. The boy would make Joseph's life a living hell, though Ash was sure he knew firsthand what it was like. Sometime later. In the castle on the couch sat Chloe and read a book. Suddenly, Ash started knocking on her door. The guy walked into the room and asked the girl if she was expecting him. Chloe felt like she would miss that smile very much if she never saw it again. With a smile on her face, the girl told the guy that she missed him very much. Ash started talking about how he had heard that Chloe was in trouble at the tea party. Chloe said that it was so, and the tea party suddenly decided to visit the Honourable Empress. The girl realised what he must have been told about it by Bassie. Ash was telling the girl that considering she wasn't on the guest list, Chloe must have been surprised. Chloe started talking about what she thought the Empress was trying to intentionally make her look bad. Chloe talked about how the Empress doesn't seem to like Ash marrying someone below the guy in rank. It's true that Chloe and Ash are from different worlds, and whether they show it or not, Chloe knew that many in high places were against their marriage. Ash was telling the girl that the Honourable Empress was understandable. The Vrinicles are direct descendants of the imperial family. Therefore, the Empress feels like she has to look out for everyone. Ash apologised to the girl for going through such a nerve-wracking experience. Ash has been telling the girl to get to know each other better. And one day, Ash is sure that Chloe will decide that she wants to confide in such a charming and wonderful gentleman who sits across from the girl, only thinking about his beautiful wife. Chloe was smiling and talking to Ash about how silly he was. The guy was talking about how he loves Chloe so much that even for the girl's attention, he doesn't mind even begging a little bit. Ash talked about how the girl really feels that way. Chloe talked about what she knows. Ash talked about how, if something bothers Chloe, Chloe should definitely tell the guy about it. The guy started talking about how he was afraid that Chloe would keep everything to herself, as usual. The girl told the guy that she understood everything. Chloe talked about the fact that if she could not cope with something on her own, she would tell Ash about it. But at the moment, the girl said that she was fine. After the Venerable Empress left, Countess Hatweed had tea with the girl. Chloe told Ash that she was fine. The girl told the guy that there were still a lot of invitations, so the girl wanted to put her best foot forward. Chloe wanted to become someone worthy of being with Ash. Marquis watched and smiled at the girl. He talked about Chloe being very brave. Ash talked about how he thought the way Chloe always put forth effort was admirable. The girl smiled and told the guy that he was exaggerating. Ash told the girl that it wasn't true, and that's what made him fall in love with Chloe. The girl smiled and said that she wasn't brave at all, and she was afraid of many things and was always getting herself worked up. Ash told the girl that it was enough at least that Chloe was able to go through this hell. The guy was thanking the girl for coming back to him, thanking someone for just being alive. Chloe knew that it's impossible to explain why you love someone, and their love is always so kind and tender. Ash began to ask the girl about whether she had chosen where she was going next. Chloe began to talk about the fact that at this tea party, there were many influential people from high society, so next time the girl thought to visit a place where she could meet a more diverse audience. The girl talked about possibly coming to Lady Irene's event. Chloe understood that she could not be liked by everyone, but if Chloe could improve her reputation a little, then attending various events would be the girl's main task. Ash listened to the girl and told her what he thought was a great idea. The guy thought it would be better if he didn't tell Chloe about the meeting with that scum. Ash didn't want the girl to start worrying even more. The guy talked about how Chloe's heart needed a lot of time to calm down after the experience. Ash understood the fact that it took a lot of time, even when someone was surrounded by loved ones. Ash knew that firsthand. Being betrayed by someone you love, the death of all your loved ones, being stripped of everything, being saved by a ray of light and the most unexpected people. Now it was Ash's turn to be that person for Chloe. The guy was telling the girl not to worry about the expense. Ash told Chloe that the girl should prepare her outfit as carefully as a knight prepares his armor before a battle. Ash talked about how that way no one would look down on Chloe. So Ash asked the girl to splurge for him. Chloe began to thank the guy for everything he had done. The girl was telling Ash that she didn't need to spend a lot. The guy didn't understand how she manages to be so charming. Chloe told the guy that she was just grateful to him for the opportunity to make decisions herself. Ash talked about how Chloe wasn't asking for much. The girl smiled and talked about how she wouldn't say that, considering that the girl wanted a certain someone in her life. Chloe was just glad that Ash would always support the girl. Ash smiled and told the girl about what else he could give the girl: power and wealth, if only she asked. Chloe said that the way Ash said it was a little scary, but Chloe thanked the guy for that too. The girl talked to the guy about how she knew that if Chloe needed support, Ash would always be there for her. Ash smiled and talked about how Chloe had gotten pretty good at flirting. Ash talked to the girl about how if she looked like that some more, and Hans accidentally hugging the guy around his waist, then Ash will fall in love with the girl again, before she can even blink an eye. Ash would tell the girl that everything was fine, and the guy knew a lot about the two of them. Chloe smiled and told the guy that he was a sly fox. The guy laughed and asked Chloe if she could see the effect of his tail or not. After a while, the guy started telling Chloe about how the girl can always tell Ash anything the girl wants to talk about. The guy will always be on the girl's side. Chloe told the guy that if you think about it, Ash always asks how Chloe is doing, although he never tells how he is doing. The guy started asking the girl if that was true. Chloe replied that it was. Ash looked at the girl and smiled again. The guy started telling the girl that then he could ask one any question if Chloe was so interested. The girl started asking the guy if she could ask 2 questions. Such an answer made the Marquis laugh, and he told the girl that she could ask 3 and more if Chloe wanted it so much. Then Chloe decided to ask the boy what his parents were like. Ash asked the girl if she was definitely interested in finding out. The girl started talking about how she wanted to know more about the parents, since they were the ones who gave Chloe her loving son. Ash began to say that he had heard that they had died of the disease when the boy was a child. Chloe began to talk about how she would like to meet them. Ash told her that his parents were great people. His father was kind, the kind of man who was very honest about everything, and his mother always, with an unbreakable smile, said what she really thought. Ash was their only child, so Chloe can only imagine how much love the boy received. Ash talked about the fact that the truth was there was someone else, even though from the outside it looked like the Queen was all love. The girl couldn't say that their relationship was unequivocal. Chloe talked to Ash about how the guy must have been very sad when he lost them. The girl talked about the same thing happening to her. The girl's parents died unexpectedly, even before there was a chance to find out the cause of their deaths, pretending to care. Ash talked about how he'd gotten close to one person. As far as Ash knows, he was somehow involved in everything that happened. His parents' bodies were quickly buried, suspecting that they had died of some kind of infection. There was no time to investigate other causes of death. By the time Ash realized what their cruel plan was, it was too late. Ash ran away, vowing to take revenge on them one day. That's when the boy met Chloe. Ash talked about how the girl would never know that she had become a ray of light in his life of despair. The guy asked the girl about if he could tell her a secret. Chloe didn't understand what the guy wanted. Ash told Chloe about how no one knows about it. The guy told the girl that it wasn't exactly a nice story, and then asked Chloe if she would agree to hear it. Chloe told the guy about how she wanted to know everything about him. Ash began to talk about the fact that according to the official version, his parents had died of infection. But in fact, they had been sent by someone they trusted the most. Chloe was shocked by this information. Ash started talking about how his parents had always had good health, so when they suddenly fell ill and died a few days later, everyone on the estate thought it was due to an infection, because there was no other explanation for their sudden and simultaneous demise. But they had been sent by someone beneath them in status. When Ash found out the truth, he was numb. The boy was so shocked that his ears were ringing. But Ash couldn't do anything, because the conspirators were much more powerful than the guy. All he could do was run away and hope that one day, when the time came, Ash would be able to avenge their deaths. Guy talked about how he was too small to do anything, so Ash ran away. So Guy understood Chloe when the girl felt helpless about not being able to do something. Chloe talked about how sorry she felt. The guy continued his story and talked about how when he came back, Ash was able to make that man pay for what he had done all those years ago, even though it took a lot longer than the guy thought it would. And that's how the guy came to find Chloe. The girl always thought that behind his smile there was something hiding, something much worse than the girl could imagine. But Ash was able to handle it all on his own, while Chloe was able to do it only thanks to Ash's love and care. The girl didn't realize how hard it was for him. The girl started telling the guy that he was really adorable. Ash asked Chloe if she really thought so. Suddenly it hit the girl. She called the guy over and asked about the forbidden room being his parents' bedroom. The guy with a smile said no and talked about how he was now using their bedroom as his own. Ash talked about what was in that room. Contains memories of the days when Ash was truly happy. The guy talked about how he was just embarrassed to show it to anyone. Ash asked Chloe if she wanted to come inside her. Chloe talked about how she was curious. But there was a but. The girl was telling Ash that if he didn't want it, it was okay. The guy smiled and told the girl about his Chloe being too adorable. Chloe smiled and talked about how she had never been told that before. The girl talked about how Ash was much more adorable than her, but his hackneyed phrases weren't so bad. The girl thanked Ash for dealing with all the difficulties. Chloe was happy to be with Ash. The guy smiled and told the girl to pat him on the head. After a while, the girl decided to ask Ash who killed his parents. The guy always knew that one day you would tell Chloe about it. The guy just didn't think that this moment would come so soon. Ash talked about how it was his uncle. He was his dad's half-brother. And after Ash's parents were poisoned, his uncle inherited the title of Marquis. He was smart, but once a man like him dares to do something treacherous, he is capable even of betrayal. Chloe wanted to say something to the guy, but he interrupted her. The guy talked about how, with the help of his love for Chloe, he would be able to cope with everything and regained his rightful title of Marquis. All those who were guilty of his father's death suffered the deserved punishment. Chloe noticed that Ash was always smiling, though speaks of such a sad and painful time. It was all like Chloe hiding behind the curtains of her indifference to the world. Not many people seem to know about such a shocking story. The battle to become the head of an illustrious noble family, between a young but full-fledged heir and his experienced relative, who has been cunning for years to achieve his position. Nothing more fitting to be the scandal of the century. Such a story would surely have spread throughout the empire. Ash was talking about how no one knows about it, except for a few members of the imperial family. Even if anyone knew, they wouldn't dare speak of it publicly. They didn't dare because they were afraid of Ash's anger. The moment they would have opened their mouths in the middle of opening their mouths, I would not only come after them. The guy would make sure that everyone spreading false rumors was gone as well. The girl talked about what was clear to her. What was clear was that Ash's parents had died even earlier than Chloe's parents. Although Ash was a little bit scarier than the girl, he was still a child. The situation was so dire that Ash had to flee, but he was able to turn things around. That's already enough to show his incredible fortitude. At the time, Chloe did nothing besides sending Doria to jail, to avenge her wrongdoers. But that Chloe believes in all forgiveness for any deed, but the girl just wanted to put all her strength to move on, not to get bogged down in this swamp of the past. Chloe started asking the guy what he thought. The girl asked the guy if it was stupid that she wasn't afraid against those who betrayed her. Ash told the girl that everyone makes different choices, and the girl's decision not to take revenge was not wrong, though Ash would punish them using any methods available. Ash couldn't say that Chloe should do exactly that, because everyone is different. The guy asked the girl about the fact that doesn't he remind her of that all the time. The guy would always respect Chloe's choice. And also Ash would always be on Chloe's side. She wondered if there was anyone in her life besides her parents who cared for her so much. Unlike the previous tea party, Lady Neela's charity party was held inside the big hall because there were those who came to donate money and those who came to buy. There were many people from all walks of life there, from nobility to wealthy peasants. Chloe used to go to these evenings with her parents when she was a child. Parents often attended such events because it was a good way to make new acquaintances in the industry. Unlike the ladies who refused to approach Chloe for fear of the Honourable Empress, there were also those who decided to just say hello, because there were indeed many people. The reasons for their interest were different. Some were curious, others just wanted to use the connection between Chloe and Ash. There were even those who were envious of Chloe or were hostile, but once in a while, there were those who were really times to get to know Chloe. A commoner girl becomes a marquess, as if the protagonist of a love novel. Chloe knew everything perfectly well. She knew that her very existence was a separate reason to talk. Suddenly someone called out to the girl. Chloe was shocked, because it was Grey Raymond's voice. Chloe turned to my lady and said good day to her too. Grace Randall, Stephen Randall. It was a couple who lived in the neighbourhood, often visited Chloe's parents. Chloe's father worked in trade, started with a small store and developed in this business himself. Her mother was from a distant foreign country. She had no one here. When they moved to the outskirts of the capital, there were no friends left at all, so they had a good relationship with their neighbours. And when Chloe's parents were killed, The Randall family was the only one Chloe could turn to. They were the ones who reported that her father's business was on the verge of bankruptcy, and they were the ones who found Chloe a job at the orphanage. Perhaps they didn't know the manageress would be like this either. They had provided the job so far from the capital without looking for Chloe. Anyway, Chloe was nobody to them, so the girl didn't hope for more. So Chloe didn't ask about them anymore and didn't stick her nose in other people's business, because it was painful to admit that those who cared only used Chloe, but unfortunately, they're back again. Since this happened, Chloe is not going to back down. The girl has sustained wounds that are so great that Chloe doesn't want to turn a blind eye to it anymore. Chloe began to tell Mistress that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and it's been about 10 years since the woman sent Chloe to work at the orphanage. Milady began to tell Chloe that everything was right and the girl was right. Chloe noticed her nonchalance. The girl didn't know if she had enough experience or no reason to worry. Chloe thought that despite her title, she was clumsy in dealing with people. The girl talked about how things were going well. Chloe started to ask Mistress if she had gotten the title. Mrs. Randall was an ordinary middle-class person, but the clothes and accessories she was wearing now were much better than before. Also, her last name hadn't changed. Mrs. Randall began to talk about how they had met the dying Baron. He had no descendants, so he passed his title on to the Randall family. So they changed her last name, and now she was Mrs. Raymond. Chloe was talking about what a touching story, and the girl would sooner have been able to believe it. The Randalls couldn't afford to buy even the lowest titles. Although Chloe was a commoner, she lived a rich life. Her father's business prospered, but then these people told Chloe about the debts. The girl was heartbroken and listened to no one but them. What happened to Chloe was like a hurricane. The girl was in a hurry to get away from it all, so there was no time to check what belonged to her, unfortunately. Chloe was so depressed that she didn't even think to look in her father's or lawyer's office to verify all the assets. If Chloe's parents hadn't gone bankrupt and the Randall family could appropriate her father's fortune, it would be enough to buy the title. The girl was a commoner, but still managed to get a basic education thanks to the wealth of her parents. The girl understands because she's been through it. Personal boundaries should not be neglected. That was Chloe's experience. Mistress began to tell Chloe that she had something to say. When Chloe went to the orphanage, the people Chloe's parents were working with planned the deal fell through. The Randall family made a new one with them, but the gentleman still feels she owes Chloe a debt. Mrs. talked about how they were confused, so they took on a case they hadn't dealt with before, so they couldn't find Chloe. The Randall family had only heard that Chloe had gone elsewhere from the shelter. Mistress is happy that Chloe has grown up to be such a beauty, and also that she had married a marquis. The mistress talked about how nothing else was saved, but they bought the office where Chloe's father used to work. The mistress talked to Chloe about how she was happy to meet the girl and return one thing to Chloe. The woman rummaged in her red pouch with her hand and then pulled out a key and held it out to the girl. The mistress spoke of the fact that when she was poor, she had gotten into the habit of carrying a bunch of keys with her everywhere. But thanks to her, the woman could give this key to Chloe. Mistress began to talk about this being the place where Chloe's father worked. Mistress asked Chloe if she remembered where it was. The girl began to say that she knew the place. When Chloe's parents died, she cried a lot and was afraid to be alone, so Mrs. Randall often stayed with her at night. Chloe thought about the fact that if this key the woman carried for years to give away, one would think that all her actions were merciful. The girl could not believe that what she had gone through made the girl so sensitive. The mistress started telling Chloe to come whenever she wanted anyway, and to keep all the documents in the office. Chloe talked about how uncomfortable she was, and the girl decided to pay a fair price for it all. Chloe realised that it was dangerous to accept kindness like that. The past Chloe would have already sympathised and cried, but now it was different. Mistress told the girl that she shouldn't have to pay, since Chloe's parents were very kind to the Randall family. Besides, it was originally Chloe's. The girl started talking about how she would accept the keys then. The mistress began to say that even though it took a lot of time, but she was glad that the thing had returned to the owner. The mistress began to say that when she reissued the office to Chloe, she would send the documents to the girl. Mistress talked about how they needed to manage everything, so they registered the office in the Randall family's name first, but they had everything set up so they could give everything back to the girl at any time. Mistress started talking about how she still had appointments scheduled so she would go. Mrs. Randall began to tell Chloe that she was glad they had been able to meet by chance. The woman hoped that they would get another chance like this. The woman talked about how she had come here today without her husband, but next time she would like to come with him alone. Chloe began to tell Mistress that she hoped so too. After a while, the girl was in the castle. She began to think about whether it was all true. Chloe talked about how it had been so long. The key was old, but clean. It was like time had passed just for Chloe. If the family had really cheated Chloe, and they had misappropriated the inheritance, she wouldn't approach Chloe first and hand her the key to the office. The girl thought about how maybe her life had been so difficult, that it's okay for Chloe to doubt now. Suddenly, a girl came up to Chloe and talked about how Chloe's parents must have really had a big case. Chloe talked about how they did. They started with the province. Then the scale increased and they moved to the capital. The girl talked about the fact that the Raymond spouses are known as entrepreneurs, and it seems that they started their business 10 years ago. They found some good business partners, and with their help, they gradually developed. The girl talked about what they said. Now their business was flourishing. Chloe began to say that she had heard that the Randall family had started it with a deal with her parents' former colleagues. But Chloe's mum and dad's case went sour, so she can't say for sure that the Randall family took advantage of them. If Chloe's parents really did go bankrupt because of a bad investment, then Chloe should be grateful to the Baron and his wife, because they combined Chloe's family business with their own, so that her father's business partners would not suffer damage. After all the difficulties that Chloe had overcome, the girl did not want to believe that the Randall family had done all this only for their own self-interest. But in any case, Chloe's gut told her to be careful. The girl decided that it would be necessary to visit the office first. She would have to see Baron Raymond and his wife one more time anyway. We will need to get a certificate of transfer of ownership from them. Then Chloe will decide how to treat them. Grace Raymond, the Baron's wife. No one has any idea how much effort it took to get that title. Sure, they started from a position far above others, but even though they understood nothing about business, the effort didn't come for nothing. 10 years ago they had nothing, but a chance came along that they immediately seized. After that, they finally had a baby. To be exact, it was twins. A daughter and a son were born at once, and the happiness of the new parents was unbounded. But one day there was a meeting that became a great opportunity. Mrs. Randall stood with the guests and saw a familiar face. It was a face that looked something like that child. People began to talk about it being the famous wife of the Marquis of Brinicle. People talked about how the lady must have arrived later, so she didn't hear when she was introduced. The wife of the Marquis of Brinicle is one of the most talked about persons nowadays. The fact is that the Marquis of Brinicle fell in love with her, a commoner, at first sight, and immediately married her. Ash, even though it was difficult, obtained a marriage license from the Emperor himself so that no one could object to her new position. The mistress couldn't believe that the Marquis's wife was Chloe. The orphanage where she worked was far away from the capital, but because of the resulting affection, Grace found her a good place. However, she asked the director of the shelter to find a job for Chloe to keep the girl there as long as possible. Chloe had a beautiful face, and the girl was sure that she could get a pretty decent husband, but the lady couldn't believe that it was a marquis. And not just any marquis, but the Marquis of Brinicle, who had the Emperor's blood in his family. It was a shock to everyone when they found out. No one could believe it. The informants said that the Empress Dowager suddenly appeared at a tea party, attended only by high-ranking guests, and humiliated a commoner. But the ruler, although she belongs to the imperial family, long gone from the social world, and among those gathered there, the Marquis of Brinicle had a title above. One could just pretend to be a stranger, but having become a baroness, Grace Raymond called out what it was about fame and power that money could not buy. She could no longer ignore the desire coming from her heart. One could use it to create a close relationship that could be useful in the future. However, now that the Countess had children, she felt a slight remorse for what had happened earlier. Mistress remembered the big eyes full of tears. Then Chloe did not doubt their words and did not understand anything. The husband-mistress had taken the lead, and the wife was just throwing her head around. Mistress had some regrets, but if time could be turned back, I would have done the same thing. Either way, Chloe doesn't know anything. So Mrs. Randall decided she had to take a chance. When there was no money, Mrs. Randall started carrying a key. Now it's a reminder not to be reckless. No one knew that this key could be useful. After all, they say that sometimes you have to give up a little to get more. Now was just such an occasion. Chloe immediately recognized the mistress. Because of that, the woman was a little surprised. But even more, the mistress was shocked to see Chloe's indifferent face. Yet she didn't look like a cunning person. Even though the smile was gone from her face, the feeling of innocence like before remained. Mistress realized that there was still an opportunity. Mistress realized that when her husband came, they would have to decide what to do next, and then they could go higher. After a while, Chloe was in her room and hugged the teddy bear. The more Chloe looked at him, the more it seems that this bear looks like the one from when I was a kid, although that bear was better. At that time, Chloe wrote down her personal experiences in a personal diary and hid them in a teddy bear. And the girl Chloe was friends with found these notes, read them, and left answers there. Sometimes it was something trifling, and sometimes they were really hard experiences. A little girl stood and said her name was Chloe, and then she would ask the other girl what her name was. The girl answered that her name was Erin. Chloe did not remember that the girl said her last name, but Chloe remembered blonde hair and blue eyes. At first sight, she seemed nice. Her feline, slightly arrogant expression and short answers to any questions. Soon the girls were even sleeping together, holding hands. Erin was so smiling. Erin and Ash had a similar aura, even if the memories are fuzzy, but they seemed to be siblings. Chloe said that it was impossible, and Ash was definitely the only son of the Marquis of Brinacle. Erin was a child that Chloe's parents had picked up on the street. There was something else. Mum and Dad didn't tell Chloe anything, and the girl didn't even think about anything, because she was so excited to have a friend. Erin came out of nowhere and disappeared into nowhere, before she could even feel the sadness of separation. Chloe faced more rattling when her parents died. The girl wondered how Erin was doing now, and if she was okay. Chloe hoped that the person from her happy memories didn't have a life as complicated as Chloe's. It was a very hard day for Chloe. The girl met a lot of people. Chloe began to tell how her day was, but suddenly she was interrupted by Ash and said that he would like Chloe to tell it all to him, not to a teddy bear. Chloe saw Ash and asked him when he got there. The guy started to talk about how he was trying to make a little noise, but his habit of walking silently arose a long time ago, and it's harder than Ash thought. The girl looked at the guy. When you think of it that way, Ash is always hiding his approach. He spent so long imprisoned and afraid that he's become sensitive to sounds. No matter how relaxed the guy seems, you can see how wary Ash is. It was more like a habit than a conscious action. Chloe heard about him having to fight to get his title back. Maybe that's when the habit was formed. Without even realizing it himself, Ash is acting like this. The girl thought about how terrible and difficult his life was. Chloe began to tell the guy that everything was normal. Ash began to tell the girl that if something happened, the girl could tell it to the Marquis. People can't let go of their past so easily. It's something that both Chloe and Ash need to accept and move on. But girl thought that everything would be okay as long as they were together. Chloe started telling Ash that she was fine, because she was. Ash told the girl about how he understood everything. The girl started telling the guy that he looked a lot like his childhood friend. Ash started asking Chloe who she was. The girl started talking about how her name was Erin, and she seemed to be older than Chloe. Now that Chloe thinks about it, the situation seems absurd. They were close to this girl, but Chloe knew nothing about her. She was lost, and Chloe's parents found her and brought her into their home. At the time, Chloe was just happy, so she didn't even think about asking Irene anything. Ash started telling Chloe that it was some questionable person. Chloe told Ash that she agreed, and now the girl realized that she had been acting recklessly. But also Chloe added and said about the fact that in all the time she had been with Erin, she had done nothing wrong. This was a child whose parents had passed away suddenly. The the girl got lost and then fainted on the road. Erin is very beautiful, so it was dangerous for her to stay outside. Erin didn't say anything about what happened, and she just kept quiet. At first, Erin acted wary of Chloe like a stray cat, but then they became friends, and Chloe and Erin began to have fun together. Of all the friends Chloe had, Erin was the only one she felt comfortable with. Their characters were complete opposites, but it brought them even closer together. Ash started talking about how, from what Chloe was saying, it was all in the past tense, which meant that they never saw her again. Chloe started talking about how she left before her parents died, leaving a note saying that she was going to find her relatives. Erin wrote that she would definitely come back and repay them all for the favour, but then her mum and dad died. Chloe was glad that the girl had decided to go her own way then. Ash talked about how Erin had no conscience, leaving the people who saved you from death like that. Chloe told the guy that she had her reasons, and Erin wasn't such a bad person. Even though she was going through a rough time, she was a friend that Chloe could count on. Suddenly, Chloe noticed the expression on Ash's face. This girl also sometimes made that face, when it was hard for her to open up, or when she wanted to understand another person. They were very much alike, so much alike that if they were the same sex, Chloe would have thought it was her. Erin said she had an ordinary family, but this girl acted like she was looking for a noble family. She was being chased by her uncle, so while running away, she got lost and fell on the road where Chloe's parents found her. Even though she was just a child, it was obvious that she had a woman's body. Chloe had even taken a bath together a few times, so Chloe was sure of it. Chloe talked about how maybe, like Ash had said, she wasn't a trustworthy friend. But at that time Chloe was happy, so the girl wanted to believe that Erin was a good friend. It's sad to think that all the people in the world will be like the ones Chloe encountered in her life. Still can't fully trust others. And Chloe understood perfectly well that it would always be like that, but she decided to try to think positively. Even if Chloe met only people with bad intentions, definitely not everyone around was like that. I wish Chloe had memories of at least one person in her past who hadn't hurt her. Chloe was very surprised when she saw that teddy bear. She and Erin used a similar one to exchange notes with each other. There was a secret hole in one side of the bear's ear where they hid notes. The fact that Chloe could share something like that with good people seemed incredible. After all, if the factory producing teddy bears is still producing them, then such a coincidence is possible. Ash began to tell the girl that Chloe's hair was a little dishevelled because she was hugging the teddy bear. After a while, Ash fixed the girl's hair, and afterwards merged with Chloe in a kiss. The girl was embarrassed by such a kiss, but Ash was telling the girl that she shouldn't be so surprised. Chloe began to ask the guy why so suddenly. Park smiled, and Chloe started talking about how today she had met Mrs. Randall, who had once helped a girl with a job. Chloe talked about how she and her husband were doing well and had gotten the title, and now she is Baroness Raymond. The girl talked about seeing her. Chloe was again immersed in memories. Ash began to ask the girl if they were alone together or not. Chloe began to answer and talk about how today was just mistress. The guy started asking the girl if she was the first to speak to Chloe. Chloe began to ask Ash why she thought so, because Chloe could also be the first to speak to the mistress. Ash told the girl that Chloe wanted to put the past behind her and start moving on. So since that was the case, Ash didn't think that Chloe would talk to a person you doubted. From here, Ash realised that it was most likely the mistress who approached Chloe first. In fact, Ash knew that the Randall family had been given the title of Baron. She expanded her business and moved to the capital. She had been a commoner in the past, but now she was a marquess. Of course, the Baroness was interested in this. Surely she was curious to know what kind of hardships Chloe had gone through, or maybe she wondered how a commoner could get such a title. But what is clear is that they took Chloe's inheritance and deliberately chose a shelter far away from the capital, hoping that Chloe would not be able to return. And even now they can't get enough, so they're trying to make contact with her. And so the Baroness, without shame or conscience, approached Chloe herself, thinking she could get something to eat. As Ash thought, people don't change. Chloe started talking about how Ash was right, and Mistress approached first. At first, Chloe didn't recognise her, but then apologised for not paying attention to her right away. And afterward, the mistress gave the girl the key to her parents' office, saying that she and her husband had been able to smoke it out after her father's business went sour. He originally Chloe. The mistress told the girl that later she would rewrite the documents to the girl and give her all the property documents. Ash told Chloe that he didn't understand anything anymore because she had been carrying this key with her all this time and then gave it to the girl. At first glance, it seems that she did it from the bottom of her heart, but Chloe hasn't completely decided it for herself yet. Ash started to tell the girl that Chloe is a very cautious person, so the guy asked the girl what she plans to do. Chloe began to talk about how she wanted to go to her father's office first. Ash said that it was clear to him, and afterwards asked the girl if she wanted the guy to go with her. Chloe thought about the word together. After all, that's what it means to be married. It's like a relationship of close people when both of you are excited and in love, when you try to spend time together and always share everything. Ash started to tell Chloe that the girl didn't even seem to be thinking about going together. Ash started pretending to cry, and afterwards asked the girl when she would start to see him as a support, when she would start to consider him her friend. The boy jokingly talked about how he was very hurt and sad, and didn't think he would be able to sleep tonight. Chloe started telling the guy that he was very important to her, and Ash could go with the girl together. The guy asked Chloe if it was true. The girl answered Ash that it was true, and they would go there together. The guy liked it very much. He told Chloe to grab their glasses and drive over there. Warmth. Chloe never thought she could feel it anymore. Ash makes Chloe realize what a tremendous amount of love she receives every day, a touch that Chloe couldn't even imagine. Thinking about it, Chloe began to cry. All this time, Ash was looking at the girl. Chloe noticed it and began to apologize for what happened. Ash, with a smile on his face, began to tell the girl that everything was fine and she did not need to apologize for crying. Ash was telling the girl about how if she wanted to cry, she could cry and it would be okay. The guy was telling the girl to cry, get angry when she wants to do it. Ash was telling the girl that she didn't have to hide it or suppress her emotions. Chloe began to tell Ash that she was actually having a hard time, and she was afraid that suddenly everything she believed in would turn out to be a lie. The girl was very happy right now, but even so, the girl couldn't get rid of her anxiety, and it depressed Chloe even more. At first, everything is good, and then it all falls apart. It had happened so many times. Chloe didn't know when she would be able to get rid of this fear. Ash started telling the girl to look at him. The guy started to calm the girl down and talk about not worrying, since Chloe had already gotten over that pain and started to move on. Ash talked to Chloe about how incredibly beautiful and brave she was. Ash talked about how he would be there for Chloe to help the girl deal with her anxiety and fear. Ash told the girl not to blame herself in any way, as the girl was not guilty of anything. In the end, Chloe fell asleep in Ash's arms with tears in her eyes. The girl didn't even realize when she fell into a dream. All Chloe remembered was Ash's warmth. The girl was talking to herself about how she had fallen asleep after crying, even though she was no longer a child. After a while, there were knocks on the door. Betsy through the door began to ask Chloe if she was awake. The girl ordered Betsy to come in. Betsy entered with a rag and a basin containing water. As soon as the maid approached Chloe, she began to tell the girl that her eyes were swollen. Betsy told Chloe that she would prepare a cold compress. Chloe did not understand what was happening. After a while, the girl remembered that Countess Hazewade was going to visit Chloe this afternoon. The girl began to tell Betsy to make a cold compress after all. The maid said she understood. In the morning, you could just go to the bath, but having learned that Chloe was afraid of water, Betsy devised another way for Mistress to wash herself. Often the maid would bring a small tub suitable for Chloe into the room. Betsy talked to Chloe about how it wasn't as strong last time. The maid was telling Chloe about how Marquise was really treating Chloe inappropriately. Suddenly, Marquise was a little confused about what was going on and thought that Betsy had misunderstood something. Chloe started calling out to Betsy and asking her what she was talking about. The girl began to tell Chloe that fortunately, Mistress's voice was fine. The maid told Chloe that if she was tired, she could sleep some more, and if it hurt somewhere, Betsy could give her a massage. Chloe realized that whatever she said in this situation, everything would sound strange. Chloe began to tell Betsy that she had misunderstood Chloe and the girl was not tired. Chloe told Betsy that the Marquis, on the contrary, protected her a lot. Betsy began to tell Chloe that, of course, when the girl first arrived at the estate, Chloe's body was weak and now the girl looks better. But still Chloe is silent when the girl just can't ignore such things anymore. The maid talked about how the Marquis should understand it too. Chloe understood that nothing had happened during the night, and everything was fine. Countess Elaine Hayswade. She had 2 sons growing up now, but she still had a daughter who died just after she was born. The Countess was weeping as she held the dead baby, who was not even 6 months old. It was her first child, so it is impossible to imagine what more grief she experienced. The Countess married a little early and gave birth shortly after the wedding. The little girl could be the same age as the Marquise now. Since then, whenever she saw a young girl of the same age, she could not look away. A long time had passed, and everyone had long forgotten about it, but for the mother's heart, the child continued to live. The Countess asked Chloe how old she was, and the girl replied that she was 25. The difference was about a year or 2. If the Countess's daughter were alive, they would be the same age. Although it is believed that the first child always looks like the husband, the daughter had Elaine's face. A firstborn, a daughter, and a daughter who looks just like her mother. Of course, her husband's parents didn't like it. Everyone wondered if she would have the same facial expression as the Countess now. Because of her facial expression, the Countess often faced misunderstandings. When the Countess's husband, Earl Hayswade, proposed, everyone chuckled and asked about his decision to get hit with an ice pick. If her status was higher, they would probably consider the Countess charismatic. But then, she would have been only the daughter of a poor baron. Only the love of her husband helped the Countess to overcome the coldness of her new relatives, the ridicule and blatant disregard of the capital's social circle. However, there was a lot of stress from the wedding to the pregnancy. The Countess often cried, so when the first child was born weak, the Countess did not leave the feeling of guilt for this. After a while, the girl was able to realize that she was not guilty of anything. That's why the Countess made tons of efforts, even if it would be painful. On the outside, she remained calm, but on the inside, bloody tears were constantly flowing. Her mother-in-law, who had looked down on her, was dead, and Elaine was now a full-fledged countess. It was all in the past now, and it would be a lie if Elaine said she didn't remember her past self when she first saw Chloe. The Countess had agreed to become a teacher only because it was a personal request of the Marquis of Brinicle. At first, Elaine didn't have any feelings for Chloe. During the lessons, the Marquise talked and had trouble expressing herself, but it was clear that the Countess took the lessons very seriously and with all her heart. Elaine liked people who made an effort. After all, she had worked very hard in the past to be her real self. After a few classes, she began to be drawn to Chloe. As she continued her training, an understanding of character emerged. Countess Hayswade taught meticulously and calmly, while taking into account the pace of each student's learning. On that side, she was indeed an excellent teacher, and she was also an open-minded person, using practical vocabulary elegantly and not using unnecessary rhetoric. The Countess spoke to Chloe about how amazing that was, and there was no need to teach Chloe anymore. The girl spoke to the Countess about her excessive praise of Chloe. The Countess replied that she never lies in such things. The Countess began to say that today was their last class. Chloe said that she was sorry. After all, it was only thanks to the Countess that Chloe was able to advance so far. The Countess told Chloe that it was all because the girl repeated correctly. Chloe was smart enough and had a burning desire to learn, so the girl believed that by doing something with enthusiasm, Chloe would be able to reach unprecedented heights. The Countess began to tell Chloe that if there was no one to talk to at the tea party or at the reception, Chloe could always approach the Countess. The girl thanked the Countess for her kindness and care. Chloe almost asked if she was okay. Everyone must have thought about it, but Chloe realized that she was not that close yet. No one could know what the future held for them, but if they didn't improve their relationships with other people, nothing good would come of it. The Countess was telling Chloe that she knew the girl would be upset that today was the last class, so the Countess had prepared a present. Chloe started to ask the Countess if she could open it. Inside the box was a very beautiful brooch. Chloe looked at it and liked it very much. She couldn't understand what kind of stone it was, because it didn't look like amethyst. This brooch had a very beautiful design. What Chloe noticed was that the colour of the jewellery was the same as the colour of her eyes. Everything was in the same style. Chloe was delighted. The Countess began to tell the girl that if she did not like that the brooch was of similar design, the Countess could tell her to make another one for Chloe. But the girl refused and said that she was pleased to be able to share something with the Countess. It's like they're close friends. They don't have to be the same age to become friends, because friendship between people transcends such a concept as age. Chloe was telling the Countess that her brooch was a unique colour. The girl talked about how she had heard that such stones of that colour were rare. The Countess said that it was a purple sapphire and she had it for a long time. When the Countess saw Chloe, she immediately noticed the colour of her eyes, so she immediately remembered about the stone and finally found a use for it. Chloe talked about how she thought that sapphire had such blue colours, but as it turned out there were others. The Countess told Chloe that there are different colours of sapphire besides red ruby. Chloe told the Countess that it was a valuable gift to her because it was from the Countess. If you think about it that way, after her parents died, Chloe never thought about having friends. Chloe was always so busy that she never even had thoughts of something like friendship. Chloe thanked the Countess for being Chloe's first friend. The Countess understood what it must be. Chloe is very happy. Baron Stephen Raymond. He was neither foolish nor neglectful of work, but there were terrible times when things went badly. Yes, whatever he undertook. Outwardly he looked perfectly ordinary, but he was always chasing money and quarrelling with his wife.